I love the grunt of a fender push just a little bit. That's that Princeton from yesterday. Most Princetons would have farted out on that. No fart. Hope everyone's doing well today. Good to see everybody. And it's beautiful weather here. Hope it is wherever you are this week. We need more good news in the world. And let's see. Hey, Martin, Peter, Cat's Music Journey, D. Ramirez, Joachim, Delon. Hey, Trey. Hey, Josh Roberts. Good to see everyone. I guess we'll just get into people's questions so we can get through as many as possible. I always feel bad when someone asks a question and I don't get to it. But then I get sidetracked and talk about weird shit. Let's see. Hey, Joachim, got not a question, but a tip. And made in Japan ST54, that's 54 reissue Strat. Those are good guitars usually. Depends on a lot of factors. Sometimes they have an ugly body seam on the sunbursts. I guess a 54 would be a sunburst, and sometimes they nail it. But I like the Japanese Strats. I liked them better back when they were $300 to $400, and the Tellys. Maybe that's showing my age. Hey, D. Ramirez. I got a 583 clone made by Ryra that I really like. Good. The problem is that it's not too loud. The problem is that I have got to find some magical solution between I need to either be over there or I need to be up here. The problem is that it's too loud for our band practices. I've tried an Iron Man mini attenuator and love the sound. Is this safe? I don't know. I've not tried the Iron Man. I've read some reviews on it that said it didn't sound as good as other attenuators, but I don't know. I've not had any experience with it. I would say if your 5E3 is too loud for your practices, turn the amp down and use an overdrive pedal, because you can play a 5E3 at quiet volumes. That Princeton right there is at really loud gigging levels in the room. I could have a drummer with that Princeton with the changes I made to it, but I can also turn the volume way down, and I've not changed the mic pre or anything, so. You probably can't even hear that. So this can be quiet. I'm not sure what that level is going to be like out there, but according to what I saw here, it should be nice and quiet and clean. You can do the same thing with a 5E3 and just use an overdrive pedal and then use the amp full out on gigs. But, you can try that. If the Iron Man has good reviews as far as safety, that is another option. I've just never found the need to attenuate a 5E3 or a Princeton or other similar, not terribly loud amps. Let's see. I have to form new habits. With my regular glasses, I have to look over them to see up close. And with these, I've got to do that to see up close. Thank you, Leo. Appreciate that. The audio seems a little off. Anyone else got a little off audio? Anyone else? Because sometimes it's your YouTube connection, and I can't do anything crazy on my end. Let me make sure that test. The only thing I'm getting is the feedback from having speakers on in the room. So, Joachim, if you've been on here for like an hour before I even started, I saw you commented while I was setting everything up, which I appreciate. But you might want to leave and come back to the. Oh, the mic is way hot. I must have brushed against it when I was doing something over on the desk. Sorry. Okay, how's this? That should be back to where we're supposed to be. Sorry about that. Yeah, restart your, leave and come back, anyone, and you should have good sync. And sorry about that. I must have brushed, when I went down to turn this 48-volt Phantom for this mic on, I must have brushed the preamp gain, because it normally is at 1 o'clock, and it was at like a little over 3 o'clock, which I didn't realize until watching this, until you guys told me. Sorry about that. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. I try to get everything right, and then I forget, which happens. And I keep looking over my glasses and not being able to see anything. One of these days, I'll get it right. What do I think of an Orange 120? Trying to find a good distance to sit where I can see. Maybe without the glasses. I can't. I don't know the Orange 120 off the top of my head. Every stream, it seems like someone asks me about oranges, and I give my standard answer. They're good. They have little problems. I don't find them very intuitive to use. The sounds have never appealed to me that much, but other people love them, and that's totally in the realm of the subjective. I wouldn't say avoid orange amps, but I wouldn't, for myself, I wouldn't seek them out. Let's see. Hey, rocking the suburbs. Got this AC30 top boost reverb from around 78 tag board. Got everything working apart from one last hum. Very strange. There is no hum when using the aux box. Cheers from Austria. When you're using the aux box, there's no is the aux box grounded? Does the aux box have a 3-conductor cable? I've not used one myself. It may be that your AC30 has a bad chassis safety ground connection. And so when the chassis is not connected to a good shield, the chassis itself is not shielding, you can get hum and buzz. And then if you connect it to the aux box, which does have a grounded connection, then all of a sudden your chassis would have a shield function. So answer that. It has its own power supply, yeah, but is it a 2-prong or 3-prong? Is it a grounded power supply is the question. Because if the aux has a grounded power supply and you're connecting with a speaker cable from the aux to your amp, and your amp doesn't have a ground until you're using the aux box, and all of a sudden that would explain the issue you have. But I don't have any experience with the aux box, and man, the 70s Voxes kept getting bought by different companies. It's too much for me to be able to say, oh yeah, they do this, because 3 or 4 of them have problems. 3 or 4 models of the same year have the same name. It's crazy. 3-prong. My point. All right. So the aux box has a 3-prong. You think your AC30 has a 3-prong, but your AC30 hums unless the aux box is connected. So that tells me that you have a bad ground in your AC30, which using the aux box with its ground cures. So something is faulty in your AC30 chassis connection. It could be a break in the power cable. A power cable has all those wires. You could have a break in the ground there. You could have a bad connection to chassis, or depending on what Vox was doing in the late 70s there, 78, they might have floated the AC ground at some point, and that capacitor they're using to float has failed, in which case your only true shielding is there when your aux is connected. Does that make sense? But that's the kind of thing I'd have to have your amp in front of me with a meter to verify. That's just a theory, but it's an educated guess. Some guys are saying audio is perfect. Others saying might be hot. I think some people might not be live synced. When you're watching these things, like I'm sure on my phone right now, yeah, I'm 31 seconds behind on my phone. Let's see if you can see that. If I click on here, there's a little thing where it's live. It's in white. If I click on it, then it goes to red live. And now I'm caught up. There's always a little delay between what I say in real time and when we guys see it. But make sure that you guys don't get out of sync with the stream. It happens a lot. Some guys seem to always be 20 minutes behind the rest of us. And, it makes for some interesting conversations. Let's see. Thank you there, Stanley. Well, that is your amp, sir. That is your amp. It's very nice. I think you'll enjoy it. I'm not sure about your reverb tank. I got your reverb tank out of the bag because the tank I was using yesterday was mine. And this one is a Mojo tone, but I didn't check to see what the numbers are. It seems like a very short decay on your tank. And you had it backwards in the bag, so it was installed in the amp. The RCA jacks would have been towards the rear of the amp, which would have hummed. So I have flipped that around, but I haven't opened it up. I haven't looked at the model number. You might have the wrong tank. I'll check in a little while, and I'll talk to you, Stanley. Tanks are cheap. Tanks are easy. Where were we? Hey, Strumbomb. I gotta remember to look through my glasses, not over my glasses. Do I still recommend the AC50 C1 or C1X? Yes, absolutely. Do I prefer the green or blue speaker? Blue is the classic, yes. Blue is the more classic sound, and I do like it, but the green sounds very nice. I'm not usually a fan of greenbacks and open back cabs, but for some reason it really works with that model. So if you can't afford the blue, there's no shame in getting the green, because you can always change out the green for something else down the road, but you also may really like the sound of the green. Now there's a video up on my channel under Vox's, and it's called Tone Hang with Steve. My buddy Steve Selvage, who's a professional, came over because he had picked one up used for like $500. I did a few mods to it to give it a little more versatility, but it doesn't sound all that different from the stock amp. But his has the greenback, and he plugged my 335 straight in and got incredible sounds. So there's no shame in a greenback, even if it's not traditionally what Vox used back in the day. Interestingly, for those who like to get in the weeds, the greenback was the first ceramic version of the speaker that had been made as a Alnico version by Celestion previously, and it was the 20-watt version of the Bulldog. Vox used the 15-watt version, which was painted blue, and then later changed to the silver version, which was supposed to be 15 watts, also 20. The ones in Marshalls, like in a 65 or 66 Bluesbreaker combo, were 20-watt versions of the Alnico. The ones in the Vox were blue, then silver versions of the 15-watt. There's not that much of a change. The 15 watts a very conservative rating, and the 20 watts pretty accurate. And then they changed to the greenback, and they just went to a ceramic. So it was a 20-watt ceramic version of what they had in the making. So there is a difference in sound between the Alnico Blue and the greenback, but you may like that difference. Now, for those of you who are real speaker aficionados, I know I simplified that and oversimplified it a little bit. And also, Flesh84, thank you very much for the super chat. It's very kind of you. I didn't mean to not mention that. Thank you. Hey, Trey Pfeiffer. This is the second time you've asked about the Orange 120, I believe. This is not singling you out. This is for everyone. Please only ask any one question the one time, because it's hard enough for me to keep track of where I'm at, because sometimes it'll scroll on me and I've got to get back to where I was. And if I see the same question more than once, I think I've gotten off the wrong place. I should try monovision contacts so I can see distance and computer simultaneously. You can set me up. Well, Bill, I think I'd love to try them. I did try some contacts that promised that, and then after about 10 minutes of having them in, I felt seasick. I'll talk to you, Bill, because Bill's an optician or optometrist. I always forget the difference. I am thinking about locating the smoothing caps close to each other. Close to each stage, rather. I read rather as each other. I've got to get better at this. Bill, you may need to hook me up within like 20 minutes. I'm thinking about locating the smoothing caps close to each stage rather than the traditional way of putting them all together in a doghouse. Any views on whether it's worth doing? Well, yeah, it is worth doing if you're doing a build from scratch. It's usually not worth doing if you already have an existing amp and you're making changes, because it's not always pragmatic to make those changes. As to the difference it makes, you will notice it more on a high gain circuit rather than a low gain circuit. So if you have a Fender, actually pretty much any Fender ever made, the benefit would be mostly theoretical. You can have the caps physically close or physically distant. The ground scheme still matters, but the physical location is not as important. If you have a higher gain amp, or you are trying to really do something very pristine without any distortion, say for a hi-fi situation. So the very extremes, high distortion, high gain amps, or very clean stereo use, then the very local staging is very beneficial. But it's usually not worth rebuilding an existing amp to do, but it is a good design goal. And if you look on my channel on some of the custom Fender style amps that I've built, and on the Excalibur and other Vox and Marshall style things I've built, I do that when I design my own boards. I use radial caps rather than axial, and I put them on the board at the stage that they are filtering. But I do not take stuff out of a doghouse and scatter them across a PC or a board on an existing amp, because it can cause more problems than it theoretically solves. Well, I've got readers for up close, and I can see distance fine without that. Bifocals I can't get the hang of, but I have long habit of seeing distance through the glasses and looking over them for close, and I'm not able to make the mental leap to looking through them for up close. I'll get it. I might get it by the end of the stream. Until then, I'll just look like an idiot from time to time, and that's fine. Well, thank you again, Flash84. You don't have to do a whole bunch of super chats, but they are appreciated. Is there a huge tonal difference between the AC50 and the AC30? Obviously, one's louder, but the circuit's the same. Well, the traditional AC15 that Vox made back in the 60s is a very different amp than the original AC30. And there are 4 or 5 different versions of the original AC30. Not all the AC30s were the same model. What have been reproduced, pretty much what everyone's experience of it has been the top boosted version of the AC30 normal. So not the bass, not the treble, not the non-top boost, but people know the top boosted version of the AC30 normal. And the modern AC15 is just a 15-watt version of the AC30. It is not a traditional AC15, which means it is very much almost the same amp depending on the model you get. Like if you get the custom, it's the same amp with a few features that are different. I'll get to that. If you get the hand-wired, I'm not sure, because they did what from my perspective is a mistake in the tone stack on the AC15 hand-wired that doesn't give you any control over your mids. And the 10 has a traditional tone stack. I assume their 30 is the same as the 15, but I don't know. The main difference from a player's perspective between the 15 and the 30, besides size and weight and cost and volume, though the volume difference is not staggering. The 15 is still a loud amp. The AC30 has 4 inputs, so you have a high and low gain input per channel. The AC15 is just 2 inputs, high gain for each channel. So you can't jumper the channels on an AC15 custom the way you can on an AC30 custom, unless you use an external AVY box. And the effects loop is incorporated differently. Beyond that, they're the same circuit, and exactly the same circuit with different output boards. They have different transformers, different voltages, but it's the same circuit. It's more like the difference between a twin reverb and a deluxe reverb versus a twin reverb and a tweed champ or something. FX loops, parallel versus series, pros, cons. Hey Gideon, there is no pro to having a parallel FX loop inside an amp unless you are paying an ungodly amount for an amplifier that was custom designed for you. Because most FX loops that are parallel in amps are horrible designs. Like the Mesas are just laughably bad. It is always best to have a series FX loop inside the amp. It should be low impedance and as clean as possible. And then if you want to do parallel mixing, use an external mixer. That's the way you do it. You send your FX loop out, and you can send it, split it out. And so these effects return the wet to this mixer. I've done this for clients, or you can do it within the multi-effects units to control your wet dry. But all parallel stuff within a loop is best left external to the amp, because people aren't building a high quality mix stage in a parallel effects loop. If anyone has done it, I have not seen it, and I've been inside an awful lot of amps at some very high price points. I hit the wrong button, sorry. Would it be a good idea for me to collate the most asked questions on all my streams into a single video or list for people to refer to? It would probably be a good idea, but I would have to go through and watch all my live streams, which are 3 hours long, to find them. And I know the top 20 probably just from repetition. My problem is that if I do that, hey, frequently asked questions, the questions I get all over and over again, people won't always have seen that video. They'll still ask the same question over and over again. But yeah, I could refer people, say, hey, go back and watch Shut Up About This, or whatever I call it. I'm kidding. I wouldn't call it that. I'd think it, but I wouldn't title it that. It's what's the best way to put this? I appreciate everyone being here, and I never want to be rude to anyone who comes. But it is like being a mechanic and getting asked what's the best air pressure for my tires all the time. I don't know. What car do you have? What tires do you have? What temperature and altitude are you driving at? But they just want to know what the best, whatever. And no one likes to hear it depends, but that's usually the honest answer. You're absolutely right, though. I should do some kind of fact thing. I've not had any of the JMI things that were done. Are they still going? I know that 10, 15 years ago they were coming out, but I've not been inside one. I imagine they're good, but I that's just from having seen pictures and reading. I can't take what people say on the forums very seriously, because all kinds of turds get recommended on the gear page and the other forums. Harmony Central has not been good for musicians. There are some better forums that people really know their stuff, like the Telecaster page, TDPRI, whatever that is, and the Les Paul and the My Les Paul forums. Those usually have some pretty good advice. And Doug Hoffman's forums are full of really knowledgeable people. So I'm not writing off all internet forums, but man, there's a lot of bad sources of information out there, and they recommend all kinds of brands of crappy amps. But I think from what I've seen of the JMIs, they should be pretty good, but I don't have any direct experience. Hey, again, Flesh, you don't have to give me $5 every time you ask a question. I do appreciate it, but you can just ask a question. I answer all the questions, regardless of whether I'm bribed. I appreciate the bribes, but I try to answer all the questions in the order they come in, regardless. Because some people have questions, but they can't afford to make a donation or anything. So the AC15 is great out of the box, or like the Fender reissues, is good but requires upgrades. The only thing that the AC15 custom needs out of the box is to make sure that the jacks are tight, the input jacks, the speaker jacks, and the effects loop jack, because sometimes they vibrate loose. And they ship with pretty crappy tubes usually. So get one of those amps, and if they have the stock tubes, which can be a mismatch of some Russian and some Chinese generics, usually a fresh set of JJs, which you probably get for about $100, $120, will make that amp come alive. Because the amps, the tubes they ship them with are cheap tubes that have been shipped 3,000 to 5,000 miles before they sit before they end up wherever you buy the amp. And if there's any shipping from that point to you, then the more vibrations and stuff. They're just tubes that might last long enough to get the amp heard at Guitar Center on a Saturday morning. They're not very good tubes. So they are dramatically improved with a fresh set of glass. Unlike the Fenders, though, they don't have anything that's flat out wrong from the get-go. And the jacks being tight on the Vox is not like, oh, there's no grounds because they didn't tighten the jacks. It's just that because the way the Cliff style jacks on a Vox or Marshall works, if they're a little bit loose and they vibrate loose, eventually they can come loose and you could break the plastic connections. They have some plastic in them. So you just make sure that they're tight. Just pass finger tight will do. Hey, Matt. Yeah, I enjoyed the Artemis coverage very much. I'm glad that they splashed down safely. I watched that last night. And it is funny, having gotten into photography, as you can see behind me too. I saw all the debate about, oh man, how come the photo from 72 or 68 is so much better than the photos we have today? Man, cameras today must suck. The famous Blue Planet photo from 72, I guess it was taken when the sun was hitting that side of the Earth in full. The photo taken on Artemis that everyone's complaining about was taken on the dark side of the Earth. It's a nighttime shot. It's amazing that came out as well as it did. That's like 50,000 plus ISO and a long shutter decay, because otherwise to the eye that planet looked black. It's not how bad cameras have gotten since 1972. That Hasselblad in 72 was a very nice camera. It's amazing how much cameras have evolved in such a way that they can take a photo of what looks black to the naked eye and get a usable image of the dark side of the Earth at nighttime view. You can see the rim of light. It was the sun was hitting the other hemisphere, and you can see the north and northwest and western coast of Africa. You can see the eastern coast of Brazil, and you can see all the light shining. You can see a bit of Spain. You can see Portugal. I'm like, there's Lisbon. It's amazing, and that was all visible in that photo. But people are like, oh man, it doesn't look as good as the perfectly timed full daylight exposure that they lucked into in 1972. You know. But anyway, yeah, I enjoyed watching that. Hey, Omelet Socks, thanks. Oh, I put about 10 hours into that Princeton. I didn't sit down and just do it. I did it a little bit here and there. I would get done with the work I needed to get done that day, and we'd have dinner and hang out, and she'd go to bed. Cause, you know, Nikki gets up at like 4:30 because she's a professor. She has to get up early in the morning. So I stay up typically till like 1 or 2, and I would do like 40 minutes here, 30 minutes there. Watch old episodes of Daredevil season 1. Then I'm on season 2 now because I'm also watching the current one. But just whetting my appetite with old episodes. So it's a labor of love. You know, Stanley, old guy, has been one of the longest commenters on my, longest subscribers I'm aware of on my channel. He sent me t-shirts with the Sonic Audio logo that he had printed. He's been a nice guy. He got a bad amp. He got it kind of for free. He asked if I could make it better. I'm like, well, I could put a Band-Aid on it. And I'm like, fuck it. Let's fix it. Let's do it upright. And I'll give him a sweetheart deal. I joke about it. I make my money off my blues lawyers. And the real players, and in town, I often give big discounts to. And I don't. Maybe Stanley is just sitting on wads of cash, and he could just tip the hell out of me. But he didn't ask me to do all this level. I didn't say, "Hey, is it okay if I just gut it and rebuild it?" I just did it. So he's gonna get what he gets at a good price. I can't offer that to everyone every time. But, you tell me how smart I am for 10 years, maybe I'll think kindly of you too. I'm making fun of myself. That is not a serious statement. Earlier in the stream, I said I don't have experience with all oranges. I'm not a big fan of oranges. Just subjectively, they're fine as far as quality. I don't think I've tried a Super Crush, so no opinion. Thank you, Trey. Appreciate that, man. How come nobody makes a high gain amp with an AC30 clean? You can see Fender and Marshall cleans all the time, but no AC30. Well, actually, Friedman and the BE100, the clean channel, the BE100, is essentially a Vox clean. It's not a Vox output section. He doesn't disconnect the negative feedback from the 4 EL34s when you go to the clean channel. But the sad thing is, a lot of the sound of an AC30 is not. It's not all the preamp. It's the power amp, the filtering, the biasing, the lack of negative feedback. I've got a AC50, a Vox JMI era AC50 that came in yesterday. I've not unboxed it. Maybe we'll unbox it at the beginning of the next hour. Would that be fun? Do people like unboxings on this channel? I know the rest of the internet loves unboxings, and I'm like, I'll grab my phone and unbox, and do a video of that in case someone sends me something bad and I document the FedEx mess it up, or I was sent something defective before I even touched it if I buy a product. But I'm not usually putting unboxing videos up on the freaking internet. But it might be something fun to unbox that. Anyway, the AC50 had 2 major changes from cathode bias to fixed bias. And it is the same preamp as the AC30, but the voltages are very different. The output section is very different. It sounds very different. But if you do want the Vox clean, you can kind of get there with the BE100 if you don't mind having a mega aggressive high gain amp on the other channel, it's real easy to put a Fender clean into something. Most of that sound is in the preamp, and so you can put the Fender preamp in front of a Marshall output section and have a fairly Fender-esque sound. But to get the Vox sound, you've got to make changes to the output section that most people don't want to deal with. Okay, if I push this button, it goes to the clean channel, disconnects the negative feedback. And it's really hard. It'd be really hard to go. I'm going to go from fixed bias, negative feedback, high gain Marshall sound to cathode bias, no feedback, Vox sound. Sometimes it's better to have, hey, this box does this thing and this box does this thing, and then use an external selector to go between them. That always worked for Jimmy Page, and it's worked for Mike Campbell, and a lot of guys use discrete amps. This one does this thing, this one does this thing, and both of them together do this other thing. Of course, that's how we get bad gas. For those of you new to the internet and gear acquisition syndrome. Hey, Brad, 4:30 a.m. Gonna do a brisket. Well, that's a shame to waste a smoker on our brisket. You could do barbecue, man. In my 68 twin video, I replaced the original 68K power tube grid leak resistors with 220K, with dropping them between range of 100K to 130K, give just enough low end in a 70 silver twin. Well, changing the grid leak resistor or bias leak resistor is a better way to think of them in that part of the phase inverter output section in a twin or other Fender. There's a range. 68K is about as low as you want to go. 220K is usually about as high as you want to go because the impedance matters. And the other variable that people overlook is the coupling cap. So I like to say within the realm of what caps and resistors and standard values exist on the market, if someone wants to sound like a twin reverb, to me that is a 100 nanofarad cap with a 220K leak afterwards, because that forms an RC filter, resistor capacitive filter, or a capacitive resistor filter. So that's going to set a high pass of X. And due to the way the output sections work, it also changes the arrival times and time constant sort of thing. So the sound of a Fender twin is 100 nanofarad and then 220K. So if someone wants to sound like a twin, that's what I do. If I'm not married to it having to behave and sound like a twin, there are other things I can do. I may decrease the value of the resistor to raise the high pass frequency, or I may decrease the value of the cap and keep the resistor the same. To an extent, a lot of this is almost in the theoretical because, you may be changed. If you go from 100 to 47 nanofarad, you may be going from a 7 hertz high pass to a 15 hertz high pass. That's still below the human hearing range. So my target for most guitar amps is I want to have all the information from the low string, the low E, down to an octave beneath that. So if the low E is 82 hertz, I want to have it capable of reproducing down to 40 hertz, even if it's not, on the Marshall, I don't want it to be full power at 30 hertz, but I want there to be some of that being amplified. But everything below 30 hertz can go to hell. I don't need any of that. And I don't need an emphasis below 80 hertz. So you've got to view the whole thing. What are you trying to achieve and why? A lot of Marshalls, you dump an awful lot of that low end before it goes into the overdrive, which is why people love the resonant circuits, because that's the only real way to control low end on a higher gain amp is to add it in the output section. Because if you do it in the preamp before the gain, it gets mushy. And there's not a lot of low frequencies to work with in a tone stack. So the bass pot on most Marshalls, when there's drive happening, is really just lower mids and wishful thinking. But if that amp is set clean or semi-clean, then you can have a wallop to it, depending on things like the output section in the Marshall. A super bass is very different than a lead. But you can play around with 100K to 130K, but you could also play around with changing the 100 nanofarads out for 47 or 22. You can even get away with 10s if you don't go too low on your too small on your leak resistor values. Hey Alice, guitar for 250K or 500K volume pot for HSS pickup configuration. Kind of new to HSS and having a bunch of a time getting things sounding right. Thanks. Hold that thought. Very convenient question. I have a full service question answer. I want to make sure this thing's in some kind of tune before I subject you to it. But this is an HSS Strat. It's a Sir Thornbucker and the bridge, which is a regular, very nice sounding PAF. And more on what I've done with that in a moment. And then the neck and middle are currently Mojo Tone quiet coils. The 67s, I think. Yeah, 67s. Before that, I had a pair of the Sir VL something or other, and they sounded really good. They sounded really good, but they had 60 cycle hum, because Sir has a coil thing he puts in the back of his guitars. It lets him use the passive pickups without any hum, but it doesn't sell the system by itself. And so I put in the quiet coil pickups, so I've got humbucker and then quiet positions, so this guitar is quiet. This becomes important. When I first wired this guitar up and I had the humbucker and the true single coils, this is a super switch here. It's a 5-way super switch. I had it wired up so that when I was on the bridge pickup, 500K. As soon as I went to position the middle position or these two positions, I had the super switch wired to put a 500K resistor in parallel, knocking this down to 250K. So when I was on the neck pickup, I had 250K. Turn the amp up a little bit. When I switched to the Mojo Tone quiet coils, which are stacked humbuckers, I found that they sounded dark at 250K, so I lifted that resistor out. So it's 500K for all settings. But if you have a 250K pot with a bridge humbucker, it really sounds muffled. I really prefer to have the 500K. And the one thing I love about the Thornbucker is you've got the full humbucker. But you can be a wimp and coil tap it. You can be a PRS chasing tone bum and do the partial split. But the real joy of this pickup is series parallel. So, series parallel. Here's parallel. Which sounds very close in a lot of ways to an actual Strat single coil. If I put it on the bridge in parallel and I just back that tone down to about 8, there it is. And no treble bleed, 50s wiring. So the tone stack is hung off the wiper of the volume pot, not off the input or off any pickup. And that gives me a real versatile amp. And, you know, nice thing is I can be like... And that's how I do it, at least. But that's what I would do. You can always, if you don't have access to a super switch or know how to wire it up, or you got to find a tech to do it, or whatever. In the meantime, just stick a 500K pot in there and just roll your tone back to 8 when you go to the neck and middle positions, But you can always take away, you can't add more, which is opposite of cooking. Where were we? There we are. Sorry, I'm still looking over my damn readers. The Runt 20 isn't the Runt 20 of volume only AC style clean. The Runt 50 I think is his Fendery. The 20 I thought was more of a Marshall clean channel. It's been a while since I had one in. The 50 is a normal channel Fender. I don't recall what he did in the Runt 20 off the top of my head. I drew it out somewhere. It's one of my notebooks. I could just call Dave and ask for the schematic if I needed it. But last time I had one in, it was so simple. Anyway, it doesn't matter what the AC style preamp really is. The output section is not AC style. It doesn't sound like the thing. But I like the Runt 20 sound. I like the Runt 50 sound. They're different sounds. Hey, David. A quick question on my Mojotone British 50 watt. On low volumes, it's acting like a noise gate. Is this just from having a low input signal? Using a Strat with noiseless pickup and top boost Eric Clapton Strat. Make sure, does the Clapton Strat take batteries? Make sure you don't have a bad battery. Shouldn't act like a noise gate. There's no noise gate function there. You could have a bad tube, just not conducting it unless the gain reaches X. But before you worry about anything in the amp, make sure it's not anything to do with the guitar. Get a different guitar. There's no shame in saying, hey, this sounds weird. I have a weak cutout signal versus just doing. If that sound is strong, but your output from your guitar is weak, it's a guitar. If that sound is weak, it's not the guitar, it's something in the amp. I don't do that a lot in the videos because it doesn't look very fancy, but I guarantee you Brad does that. I do that. Every tech I know has little tricks like that, little shortcuts. Like, all right, I don't care if it sounds good. Is it making sound? Hey Flesh, I appreciate again the super chat. You've done like 5 now. That's a lot of money. I appreciate you. You don't have to keep doing that, man. Would I accept an amp straight from Sweetwater to me for modification? Would I be willing to fortify a Mesa 2 C+? I don't want to work on any Mesa C2 pluses. So if the amp in question is a Mesa, no. Life is too short. I don't like them. I don't believe in them. I don't think that they're worth anyone's money. I think it's a bad company that has criminally ripped off players for decades, and I don't want to keep their logo going. I'm uncomfortable accepting brand new apps from Sweetwater to me unless it's a client that I have an existing relationship with, because if anything goes south, if anyone's unclear, I voided their warranty. Oh my God, I'm the bad guy. Sweetwater said it works. I get it. It doesn't work. It must have been you. It just sets me up to fail. I tell people, if you buy an app that you already like the sound of. Live with it. If after a while you're like, man, I really like this, but I think it could be better, then reach out to a tech to have some work done. Very targeted work, because you may not, or say, you know what, I like this thing. I like this guy's channel. I took out the bright cap on my Deluxe Reverb issue. Yeah, I like that amp. He says they're better speakers than the C12K. Let me try some different speakers. Wow, he's right. I love the Vintage 30, whatever. These are not big mods to an amp. So if an existing client that I have a good relationship with wants to do that, then I feel more comfortable. But for someone I've not done any work with, it puts me in a spot where I could have a big fail, and I don't want to be there. Sweetwater does amp mods now, just FYI. Well, bless someone's heart. A lot of amp mods out there in the world, and I've seen I know an awful lot of techs, and I've seen an awful lot of amps. I think there are like 4 or 5 people who are qualified to actually do amp mods, and I'm not sure that any of them are working in Indiana. But if I'm wrong, there goes my sponsorship, right? I mean, 2 years ago, when I was getting serious about my new setup in this year, maybe 3 years ago, I called my local rep. Hey, Henry, if you see this, sorry about all this stuff I'm saying about your company. And, I wanted to buy some monitors. And I said, hey, I'll be glad. I'm not looking for anything for free. I'll buy whatever I end up using, but it might be a good video. It might be a good thing for you. I'd like to try out the HS7s from Yamaha, which is what I ended up buying. I'd like to try out this Mackie, and I'd like to try something else that Brad recommended, and one other thing. I said, here it's like 50,000 subscribers. I'll do a good technical review, and the amp that I don't want, the speakers that don't work for me, I'll send back, and I'll buy whatever keeps. They didn't want to play ball. Apparently, I had been too critical of things that they sell or something, so they didn't want to have any relationship with me. And and since that time, they always just send me a bit of honey when I buy things from them, which is cruel. Mono Myth is in Indiana, but he's not taking mod work. He's not doing work for Sweetwater. Shay's not going to be touching that. I'm not singling out anyone in Indiana. I just remember that's where Sweetwater is. I didn't remember the name of the town, so sorry. I could be wrong. They could be doing fantastic work. I have just not seen any large companies doing fantastic work because they don't want to pay people fantastic wages to get people who are qualified to do the fantastic work. Where was I? Hey, Peter, any suggestions for a pedal switcher for a wet-dry setup besides the gig rig? I don't know what the gig rig offers for a wet-dry setup. I mean, I know they have their stuff. I've just not looked into the program patches for it. I'm not a big fan of wet-dry for live. If you have the money, because you're touring and you've got your own PA and your own sound person, your own monitor mixer on stage and all that, then odds are you're doing in-ears, and you can have them, you can work with the guy that you already have on staff to make sure that your mix and your front of house are what you want. You could just use fractal stuff and they can do all that for you. If you are trying to make it happen and you're just going to show up at a club and play, and this is my setup, most sound guys aren't interested in working with your wet-dry rig and setting up a mic for this and a mic for that or anything. And then you have all this stereo information on stage that gets lost live because most PAs are running mono, because it's really hard to get stereo to be audible the same in the right ratio at every position of a venue. So, you go over, it sounds great if you're near the monitor mixing position, the mixing position, but if you go over there by the bar, all of a sudden you have weird cancellations and you don't hear something, the reverb's not there. You go to the other part of the venue and all you hear is reverb or things, the guitar just cancels out. So to me, people should go as simple as possible. Mono. Do stuff in front of the amp, do stuff in the effects loop if you got a good effects loop, or just trust the house guy to add some plate to your Marshalls and you just hear them dry on stage and you know that's going to sound like the record out front. As simple as you can keep it, unless you have really deep pockets. Because if you have really deep pockets, you hire me. I'll come out for 6 weeks. I'll consult with you. We'll build the whole rig together. We'll train your tech how to do it. There are tiers to this. I'm not saying that I'm the only person who could do this. Certainly not. But unless you have a huge amount of revenue already from your musical endeavors, which is decreasingly probable these days for anyone, quite separate from any issue of talent, I'm pretty sure that, you look at what J.D. Simo goes out on the road with, or Uncle Larry when he gigs, he's like, I'm going to take 2 deluxe reverbs to my pedal board, because I can stick the pedal board in overhead, and maybe I won't even take the deluxe reverbs. I'll just have deluxe reverb reissues on my rider. That's the level that the real pros are usually at. But we grew up wanting to be like Steve Vai or Stevie Ray or some Steve. We grew up thinking we're gonna be on a huge stage with racks and racks of stuff, and there are very few people still doing that. And the ones who are, like Alex Lifeson came out. I'm interested to see what his new rig is like. I know Def Leppard's all doing in-ear stuff with little rack stuff. It's all direct. Lukather, again, I don't think Lukather is actually hearing much on stage through a guitar speaker. Or if he is, it's at fairly low volumes He's got dialed in. But Lukather had the rig of doom. Lukather could also show up, grab this Strat, plug it straight in this Princeton reverb, not touch a thing, and sound 100 times better than I do. Just the sad part of life. What glasses I'm wearing now? Hey, even my regular glasses are for distance, and I'll look over them to see close. These are readers, and I keep looking over them out of habit because I just used to seeing the world that way. I've got to maybe if I raise the mic up so I have better posture. Hey Phil, have I ever serviced a Marshall Master Lead 2199 solid state combo from the late 1970s? I have worked on, I think, what that model. I don't remember 2199 because I don't remember sequences of numbers. I'm pretty good with the 59, 87, 2204, 2203, 1962. Beyond that, I forget. The numbers swim in my head. I can't remember sequences of numbers to save my life. I don't know my wife's phone number. It's got a 3 in it. It's got a couple of 3s in it. That's what I know. I've got it on my phone. That saves my ass. But I think I have worked on that model. And if so, it's on the channel. It's one of the only solid state. I think I've got 2 solid state Marshalls on the channel, and it's the most recent. But I don't have many memories of working on it other than it was pretty simple to work on. Hell no, I'm not going to use AI for jack shit. I lie. I use AI for 2 things. I've got this plugin here which recognizes the human voice and removes things which are not the human voice. So now I turn that off, and you're going to be hearing the fan that's keeping me from sweating on the stream. But turn it back on so you don't have to hear the fan, but you still hear me. So that to me is a good use of AI because it's not actually mining data. It's just doing that one function. And I like the noise reduction the AI has for some graphics things I do for a video and for photos. But I don't want it to tell me anything or compile notes for me. I don't want it to write my term papers. I don't want it to know where I live, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need an AI farm kind of thing at all. Hey, Mark, I'm glad you met Tanner. He seems like a nice dude. Hey, Jorge, thanks for the reliability mods for the Super Reverb reissue last week. Any tonal mods? Not really. I don't think there's any need to change the tone of a Super Reverb reissue. It's a Super Reverb. It's one of the desert island amps. You make those reliability issues to it. You make sure you have good sounding speakers, and then you practice, and the rest is on you. I don't think it needs any tonal mods whatsoever. If you really want to get nitpicky, to me this is more reliability, but you can view it as tonal. It's got those little green ceramic caps that don't always sound the best, and they often become microphonic. And I usually change them mostly because they become microphonic. But like the 500 picofarad in the driving the reverb is notoriously goes ping in those, and I change out the 250 picofarad in the treble circuit on the tone stack, and I change out the ones for the bright caps that are on the switch. So those are both reliability and tonal improvements to go to a Vishay 562R series, but it's the same value. You're not changing out 250 for 380 or something. You're just 250 for 250, better quality, less likely to go ping. We got enough machines that do that. Well, that weird green layer, Green Mystic Surfer, is not actually the Aurora Borealis. That weird green layer is the sodium layer that is in orbit high above the regular atmosphere, and it's electrically charged, and it comes from asteroids or meteoroids that hit the atmosphere and burn up, and they bring sodium, and that sodium dissipates in the very, very upper atmosphere and then builds up in a thin layer that's electrically charged, and that's what you're seeing in that photo. The Borealis in that picture, if you were seeing it, would be at the very upper right. You can just see where Antarctica is, but due to the nature of that, you're not really seeing either pole in that photo, but you are seeing the halo around the Earth there, and that is the sodium band, sodium layer, which is cool to know that stuff. Yeah, it's a shame. Well, every ounce counted, and if I ever make it to the moon, that's the first thing I'm gonna do is go get some free Hasselblads. Hey, Dustin. Man, yeah. Those astronauts, all astronauts, are incredibly brave. Just strap yourself to a stick of dynamite. I mean, the regular stuff with the space shuttle and things getting you up to the International Space Station are scary enough. But you talk about that thing that they launched for Artemis and the old Saturn V's. Those are monstrous, and anything in the world can go wrong. And they talk about, oh, the astronauts can eject. They all know that if anything goes wrong in the first minute, they're all toast. Literally. And then to know, in the back of our minds, we know that flying in an airplane is safe. But at the same time, every time one takes off, part of you says this should not be happening. What if this time the magic doesn't work? And amplify that by a million, because all right, if we get this precise orbit twice around the Earth, we can slingshot to where the moon's going to be, at X time, 4 days from now. And then we have to be precisely at the right angle to the moon and hit the rockets just right to slow us down so that we get caught by the moon's gravity and enter the correct orbit for the moon. And then time everything so that we slingshot back to where the Earth is going to be. Is not there. There's no guarantee. We have to have all the math right, and we hope that we can get trapped back by Earth's atmosphere and gravity, not atmosphere, gravity. Otherwise, we just shoot off into space, and there's no fuel, no way to get us back. We're just going to be gone forever. So, and then you come back and you're like, okay, hopefully this heat shield will work. It hasn't always worked on all the space shuttles, but maybe it'll work this time. I have nothing but respect for those 4 scientists, those 4 brave scientists, all of whom I'm pretty sure have their vaccinations. No flat earthers at NASA unless they have someone appointed from the government side these days. All right, when we get back, we're going to answer oxidized stock flanger question. But we're going to take our first intermission. For those of you new to the stream, I do 3 hours most Saturdays. Well, usually 3 hours. Sometimes I go a little longer. Sometimes I can't do 3 hours, but 3 hours with 7-minute intermissions at the top of each new hour. And I'm calling this one maybe a minute early. So I'll see you guys in 7 minutes. I'm going to do this unboxing in just a second. I can keep from tripping on guitar cables. Someone was saying that my voice sounded gated. I have a gate on, so when I play the guitar, this mic doesn't pick up the guitar amp. Otherwise, because it's set for my voice, it's way too loud. Let me turn the gate off while I'm not playing, so my voice won't cut out if I kick the reverb tank again or anything. Let's see, try to do this without showing anyone's home address on the internet. Now, if this were a usual YouTube video, to open this cardboard box, I would have to go and find a machete or some other expensive, ridiculously oversized knife, Paul Hogan approved. The real way you do it is you get a utility knife or suitable with a very small exposed blade, sharp but small, because I don't want to cut through the box. I don't want to cut through anything inside the box. I just want to cut the tape. And this is like this one. He's got two boxes kind of lobstered together. Let's see. It's a bit odd in terms of the construction, but I'll figure it out. So I'm just cutting through the tape while I figure out how this thing was put together. Looks like this might be up. Let's see. It's an odd lobstering, but I will try to rise to the occasion. Aha. And while I do this, I'm going to put the question up on the screen that I've been thinking about during the break, which is the flanger question, which I'm going to let you guys read to yourselves, because I don't actually have an answer, because there are two things at play there. You can have an impedance mismatch and probably a level mismatch. You would probably need a dedicated external mixer which had a series insert on the channel, because you need to, first of all, have the impedance of the signal correct for the flanger. It's a 200 ohm flanger, and so you need a very low impedance signal feeding that, and that passive loop on that amp will not meet that criteria. I didn't mean to give anyone a state representative plug there, though I actually will. It's Kathy Joe. So say hi to Kathy for me, Clint. I didn't know that she was running. I guess I did give her a plug. For those of you in southwestern Missouri. Looks like no damage in shipping. So anyway, you need to have the impedance, but you also need to bring the signal down from the line level that's in the amp to the instrument level that the pedal expects, and then you got to bring it back up to the line level the guitar amp needs. So you need something that has the ability to transparently lower the gain, feeding the pedal and giving a low impedance signal, and then amplify it back with makeup gain at a very clean level without any added noise or distortion. So probably some form of mixer that has high impedance quarter-inch inputs, which then goes to a preamp, which then has a low impedance insert or loop function. But I don't know what would do that job for you on without taking up a lot of space and being expensive, because I'm kind of out of that game. I know what the answer was in 1995. I think there are better and more options on the market now than there were then. But the other answer, which is the one you probably don't want to hear, but it's the one you should hear at least, is that there is no shame running the flanger in front of the amp for clean stuff, and even for some overdriven stuff. That's number one. Number two, there are flangers made since then which can handle high and low impedance and can handle line level or instrument level. So you might be better off getting a different flanger. it would certainly cost less than having an external mixer to do all the heavy gain and impedance matching for you. Sorry, it's hard to do this. He packed it so well that it's not just a matter of changing the input resistor on a flanger. The whole network is designed for X levels and X. The resistor in that thing is going to be choosing within a certain range. You can't change the actual range. So I don't think that's the best option, Diego. All right, just 1 second. That's why I don't usually do this kind of thing live. A little bit of damage to the bottom of this box. We may have to use a different box when we return it, but maybe I can just get some more cardboard on that side. Let me get all this packing material out of the way and show what Mr. Clint has sent us. Aha. Leave that tucked away for now. It's a little bit loose on the slider board, so I got to be very careful with it. An actual JMI AC50. AC50, not 15, 50. When we put this safely to the side, you'll see more about this in the coming days. I am so clumsy with these readers on because when I look down through them, I can't see anything farther than 3 feet. Anyway, and we'll open up the tubes later today. So that is going to be a very beautiful AC50 when we're done with it. And I have high hopes that after I take all the hardware off and remove that aluminum front panel and clamp that down flush, that it'll no longer be flapping up at that end. And I've got some 3M, very thin 3M double-sided tape that'll really help that out. So that's my best advice to you, oxidized stock, is probably just get a different flanger or use it in front of the amp, which worked for everyone in the 70s. Thanks, Rashad. Appreciate that. Let's see. And this is Clint here, owner of said beautiful AC50. And if you're in District 163, check out Kathy Jo Loy. Thanks, Trumbum. I've thought about it. I just can't figure out anything that I find. What's the best way to put this? I see people with bumper stickers, and sometimes the bumper stickers make me have a mild smile, occasionally a slight chuckle. I don't rush out and buy one myself because I know that I don't want to see the same joke every day. I don't want to see the same. I don't get tattoos because I could, if I owned the Mona Lisa and hung the Mona Lisa in my bedroom, eventually I get tired of looking at her every day. I want something different, so I don't commit to bumper stickers or tattoos. And the same thing with everything clever or witty I think up for a t-shirt design. I'm like, yeah, but then I get tired of that. I don't know. Maybe it'll just say Sonic Audio, tired of all this shit. That's pretty authentic. I'm not a born merch person. The other reasons I've not done it is because I know people who do it and they've had terrible problems with like Spring going downhill and sending out, taking forever to ship orders, and then the quality goes downhill. Like Zach used Spring for his t-shirts. They're all terrible. And I don't want to sell coffee mugs that are crappy, that break in the microwave. I don't want to sell t-shirts that shrink or that you can see through the fabric. There's got to be a better way to make money than to sell people junk, even if it's junk with your logo on it. If I can get on my high horse, especially with my logo on it, I don't want to sell any junk. Thank you very much, Strumbum. Let's see. What the hell is the deal with the Uberschall clean channel? What's the deal? Yeah, I don't like the sound of that amp either channel, but the clean is very weird. But I didn't. The one I had in was just a bad output tube and a screen resistor, and I fixed it. And I verified it worked, and I got it the hell out. I didn't go through and figuring out what the circuit was because I didn't care. That's not barbecue, Brad. That's just smoke shit. That's not barbecue. You can't use that term. Recently gigged with a custom Vibrolux reverb, the one with the white knobs. Hey, user whose other stuff I can't pronounce, I'll just call you Ew. It sounded great. What's my opinion of this one? They're $1,000 used around here. Well, it was the Vibro Verb reissue that they changed to the Vibrolux reissue. It's not really it's not really the Vibrolux. It's a custom Vibrolux, and it's got some issues. I've got some videos showing how to fix those issues. Overall, though, the major flaws of that amp are the same as the other reissues that Fender has out with the axial IC caps and stuff. Yeah, if it sounds great, I'm very glad. I've always thought they were okay. $1,000 used seems reasonable if you're in the United States. If you're in Canada, it's even better. It's different than the 68 Custom Vibrolux Snatch. I wouldn't describe any of the 68 Custom stuff as amazing, though the new 68 Custom Pro is actually a pretty good amp. But the 68 Deluxe Reverb, 68 Twin, 68 Super, etc., and Super 68 Custom Vibrolux always have way too much noise. The Fender mods things in bizarre and unuseful ways, but I hope you love it. What replacement speaker do I recommend for a real 64 Deluxe? Well, it depends on what sound you want. I didn't see can. Sorry, Gooden. The three most common are the G12C, the ET65, and the Alessandro. Most common for my clients. Those are the three speakers people choose again and again after hearing them. But you know, your choice might be an old. Find an old Jensen from the period or old Oxford from the period and have it reconed. I mean, the Oxford would probably be the most authentic, but I don't think Oxfords are ever the best sounding. I think the Alessandro is kind of like the world's best Oxford. They market it as sounding like a C12N. To me, it doesn't sound like a C12N. It sounds like an awesome cross between the quirkinesses of the Oxford and quirkinesses of the Utah. But, you know, it's such a personal choice. I will tell you it's not going to be the C12K, but beyond that. Where was that thing? Oh, 1,000 Canadian. Okay, used around here. Sorry. I saw 1,000 used around here. I missed can. Sorry. So yeah, Canadian. That's a real good price, Canadian. Perfect price for that. Yeah, the 65 series is better than the 68 series Snatch. I hate to tell you that. The 68s look great with the silver panels. All the 68 series is, aside from the Pro, which is a very different amp, because the Pro is just a single channel, as you know. You've got one. The Pro is a nice one. Keep the Pro. But all the other 68s are just a 65 reissue with a different faceplate where they cut traces on the board and populate the components slightly differently, so you're going to have a little less reverb, less negative feedback, the noisiest possible way to mix the channels for reverb and tremolo on both channels, and then way too many mids, and not in such a way that you can control the mids on the normal channel, which is an odd thing for them to have done because they have never, no Fender has ever had a tone stack the way they do it in the customs on the normal channel, but they describe it as tweed basement. It's not in the slightest. Bad marketing. I don't understand it. I'm going to be right back. I'm having a real hard time remembering to look up and down with these glasses. These are my granny readers. They're very small. I've got the other readers, which are taller. I think it might make my life easier for doing this. If not, I'm just going to gouge out my eyes. Be right back. Just got to go to the other room. You can shit talk about me in front of me. That's fine. This is actually much better because I can't really look over them. All right, this is much better. Do. Speaking of studio monitors, what are my thoughts on them? Have any general advice? Get the best ones you can afford and know what it is that justifies the price. You don't want to buy something just for the sake of it being expensive. And know that there are limitations based on the room that you're in. If you have $10,000 speakers, you will not hear $10,000 worth of sound on them unless you've put another $10,000 plus into the room and having all the acoustic properties tuned and no early reflections and any place that you can see yourself in a mirror. If a mirror was there, to have some absorption and have bass traps, you've got to have the entire space to justify spending that much. I've got Yamaha HS7s. They have enough bass for me to hear them, not so much bass that they make the room sound problematic. If I put these on and I go stand next to that corner, it sounds like shit. Right here, using them as near fields, it sounds great. I tried some 6-inch speakers before, and they were a little bit bass shy. I don't need a subwoofer for what I do. I'm using them in near fields, and if I'm sitting here in the center, I hear everything very clearly, and I know that the room is introducing some smear. I'm getting some early reflections but as long as I don't have the volume up too much, I'm not exciting the acoustic properties of the room too much. It's a very pleasant place to hear music. I know that when if I'm listening to music, it's pretty good. If I record something and I'm editing it to put out a YouTube video or whatever, I know that you're going to hear I can trust what I'm hearing. And I have some biodynamic and I have some Sony headphones as well. The Sonys are over there. So I have reality checks for the near fields for when I'm doing mixes. There are a lot of good speakers on the market. See which ones you like the sound of, but you've got to play music, what it sounds like through them. You can't just say, hey, everything sounds awesome. You don't want everything to sound awesome. You want everything to sound accurate. So you have to have albums that you've heard on a lot of different systems. You've got to have heard that album in your car, your old stereo, your speakers, your buddy's house, any place you can, just to have a real good sense of what the sound is. And choose your record accordingly. Choose real good reference tracks. And I won't tell anyone if it's Donald Fig and the Nightfly. I'm sure Dustin spent enough time with that goddamn thing. What speakers would I mix in a twin reverb? Looking for balanced sound, USA plus British. Tried Celestion GM1265 with stock Jensen. Far to the low C sharp, don't know why. ET65 with G12C. I don't like the combination of the ET65 and the G12C. I don't think the fault that you have is the G12M65, if that's the creamback. The fault is that the stock Jensen C12K is just so horrible. Now, you might have had a faulty frame on that Celestion or something. An overlooked part of choosing speakers for a Fender is some Celestions have 8 holes in the frame, some Celestions have 4 holes in the frame. Almost all Fenders, at least the reissues, have 8 fixed screws coming from the back, so you can't use a 4-hole frame Celestion without chopping off the screws, which I don't recommend. So make sure you choose suitable. Most people go home happily with either a matching pair or for those who like to mix and match. I particularly like, and that's what you've been hearing me play through, and that's what you hear me play through all the time. I've got a Veteran 30 in combination with the ET65. I like that and if it doesn't sound good through that, then something's wrong with the amp setup. There are other speakers that you may prefer for certain things, but as a general purpose reality check of what an amp sounds like, that combination has been very trustworthy for me. But the traditional sound of a twin is not a mismatch of any kind. It's two of the same. And just like my answer for the deluxe reverb earlier, it's so subjective. Try as many as you can try. The G1265 should be a good choice, but your G12M65 may not play well in the same space as the C12K, which is a horrible speaker. You might also have some phase issues there. I don't know. Any thoughts on the Friedman AC30 coming out? Well, I will have thoughts on them flesh when it is out, and I know what Dave's done. I know that Dave will make a good amp. It'll be a reliable amp. It'll be a good product, and it will suit his tastes and the tastes of the people he consults with it. I don't know how authentic it will be, or whether he'll say, well, we took this thing that we liked and we did this with it. We'll find out. And that's fine too. I'm not saying, he can't build it. He won't build it just right. He might build it exactly as they did with the same flaws. He might build it exactly as they did, just minus the flaws. Or he may zag a little bit where everyone else zigged. But it'll be a good sounding amp that'll do a certain thing very well. Hey, Dustin, I'm using something from Waves called a Clarity VX, and yeah, it's done the same thing. Real world training AI, and the same thing for the noise reduction that I use for photo and video. So I see the benefits of stuff like that. The machine learning is fantastic. The machine impersonating humans, I don't like. I'm fine with the AI. Brad, in your A6700, it's got an AI chip for autofocus, and your A6700 has got I think the second best autofocus on the planet at the time of doing this. It's the same one that they have in the A75, and it's great that it can recognize a bird or a plane or a human or a dog, or that can pick out faces from 200 yards away. And if it had three people 200 yards away, and you told it to prioritize Betty, and it knew what Betty looked like, it would focus on Betty. That stuff is really useful, but that stuff is not going to be selling us out to the Terminators. It's not in constant communication with Skynet, or is it? Let's see. Oh, come on, man. The Flat Earth Society's got members all around the world. Sorry about that, John. I hate doing the ads, but, I do 3 hours, and I need to get some more revenue. I didn't want to do the, hey, ads every 2 minutes. Have fun, kids. So I figured while I'm doing the intermission, I do an ad that I think most people here are on premium, don't see them anyway. And if you see them, just mute your phone and skip in 4, 3, 2, 1 and come on back. But yeah, do make sure that you haven't gotten delayed. Sorry. Goody Guitars is going to try his hand at making lentil salad. Wish you luck. Well, the luckiest thing that could happen is you fail and you have to get some food instead. I cannot abide lentils, except in some Indian dishes, but that's not a salad. Yeah, the boxing video is much more important than the unboxing. Clint did it right. Heavy-duty cardboard box. He used these foam panels all taped up around the side, and really there was no wiggle room, and then some bubble wrap. That's one way to do it. You can also just use multiple layers of bubble wrap. You don't want the thing moving around inside the box. You don't want any goddamn packing peanuts. They're useless. And the main thing is you want to have a sturdy box, layers of protection, and the thing cannot slide around back and forth. Yeah, I make income from the premium members. That's how it works, and you don't have to see ads. I'm not sure how they. I mean, some portion. If you watch my videos in your premium membership, I get a fraction of a penny, a very small fraction of a penny. YouTube does not pay in any predictable, transparent scale. I have had months when I've had 100,000 views that month, and I make the same amount of money as a month when I have 50,000 views, or 20,000 views, or 5,000 views. And there are months when it pays me a lot of money out of the blue. There are months when I barely make anything off of it. So I should do the merch thing and sell you crappy imported mugs and T-shirts that'll shrink and see through, but I just haven't had the time to sell out entirely. Hey Rashad, 76 twin with returning board DC leakage. I deep cleaned the waxy board and refilled key eyelets. Unfortunately, the scratchiness in pots goes, then returns because of ambient humidity. Any suggestions? Well, when the time comes, did you get both boards? Did you get the bottom of the main board? Did you get all the wax and yuck off the bottom board, as well as the bottom of the main board? You may also have bad pots. Or dirty pots. So you could have a bad issue in the pot, and you spray some contact cleaner, and that helps you make contact until it all evaporates out. So you gotta know what's what. DC you can measure. If you have a scratchy volume pot and you have 100 millivolts at the input of it, you've got DC on that pot. It could also be on the wiper of it. It could be the grid of the tube that the wiper is connected to that has DC present on its grid because of a faulty tube. Don't chase the wrong rabbit holes. Rabbit. I botched that phrase. Don't chase too many wild geese. Make sure you have a target. So if you have a noise on a pot and you don't have DC on the wiper and you don't have DC on the input, it's not board leakage. It's a dirty, unreliable pot. But also, if you can have measure voltage at where a capacitor, like a treble cap and a fender, where the cap on the board, and I've got 100 to 300 millivolts on that cap, and you think it's a bad cap, and you do all this work on the board, it's not actually a bad cap. It's the fact that the volume pot's not at zero, so the grid of the next tube stage is connected to the wiper of that pot, and it's sending DC voltage through the pot to the cap. So put the pot travel halfway through. So put it on like 5.5, and see, if you have a leakage in the cap, you're going to have say you have 100 millivolts at pin 3 and then 50 volts at pin 2. That means that the voltage is coming from the cap. If you have 100 millivolts at pin 2, but only 80 millivolts at pin 3, the voltage is coming from the next stage. So check all those things before you beat yourself up. But with a 70s twin, you really have to get as much of the wax out as possible. That's top board, backing board, both sides. It's a pain in the butt. It's worth it. And given how bad the wiring from what they used was that white spaghetti wire, and how much it gets that green corrosion that creeps up from the strands under the insulation, it can be, it's an expensive thing to have a tech do. It's a long Sunday afternoon for you to do if you know how to solder. Disconnect all those, remove all the wires, flip the board up, get both boards really clean, and then repopulate, put back new wires and have controlled lead dress and no rot and no bad solder joints. You can see I did the same thing on that, as a kit principle, not a 76 twin, but the same principle. Just got the junk out, started from scratch. But it's really rare to have a board that you cannot make work. Because there's just not much to it. You can drive out the humidity. And I live in Memphis, which is in the summer is one of the most humid places you can find in the States. And you have to go to Houston or New Orleans to get more humid. What are my memories of the Challenger disaster? You're telling me, yeah, we watched it on TV. Was that 6th, 7th grade for me? they had all the schools watch the Challenger launch because Christina McAuliffe, the school teacher, was going up, and it was a big thing they'd been pushing for like 6 months. That hey, a teacher was going to space, and she was going to do all these lessons with school kids from space. And we would tune in on, they bring in the AV cart from the storage place. The AV cart, for those was a huge CRT TV on top on a metal cart, and then a huge early 80s VCR beneath it. And she was NASA was gonna do stuff through satellite programs for her to teach classes from space. And so we were all watching this thing, and it goes up, and there's that one kid who's like, "That's cool," and we all hated him instantly. Some kids didn't understand what they were seeing. I guess I was in 6th or 7th grade. That was 83. Some of us knew what we were seeing. We didn't want to upset the other kids. It was like we were in 6th or 7th grade, but it was a big room with the TV, and there were like kids there who were younger. We didn't want to upset them, so those of us who knew what had happened were very somber about it, except for a couple of jackasses who thought it was hilarious. The little kids who understood it were in tears. A lot of the kids my age who did understand it were in tears. It was hard to watch, and then we rewatched it again and again and going up, and that flame, and then the two solid rocket boosters going their own ways. And people were like, "Oh, maybe they'll survive the landing." And those of us who understood the physics involved, even at that age, are like, "No, I hope they died fast." Turns out they were probably alive, maybe even conscious when they hit the water. But I don't want to belabor the point. It's a really brave thing to go up in any of those devices, especially when corrupt son of a bitches don't want to admit that there's a problem with the O-rings, even though the engineer responsible for identifying problems said, hey, these O-rings should not be operated if the temperature drops below X, which I think was 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was like 20 degrees. It's amazing how much safer these things are when you actually obey the safety protocols recommended by your own goddamn engineers, and you don't do a cover-up. So yeah, I was watching the splashdown. I was watching the launch, thinking, oh, please don't let anyone have cut the wrong corners this time. I hate that being realistic makes one pessimistic about these things. Hey, Jim Mass. Music Man HD suddenly loses about 90% output after about 30 minutes playing. All electrical caps, transistors, and stuff replaced by two techs, but no go. Any ideas? Well, I'd have to have your amp in front of me, and I'd have to see, is something losing voltage? Is a tube stopping conducting? Whatever's happening, a tech can identify, but there are so many ways that could happen that I have a hard time identifying it from here. It could also be that you have a speaker which is overheating, and the speaker coil is getting too hot, and the speaker no longer works after 30 minutes of playing. So that's the kind of thing you have to be very careful with that. You need to make sure that, because if that speaker is dying, if that's the cause, it could really damage the amp. Then you could have a push-me-pull-you where the speaker acts up after 30 minutes and it eventually becomes so damaged that it damages the output tubes, which can damage the transformer. So test with a known good cab that can handle that has the correct impedance and can handle the output of that amp. It's a loud amp. And then one of those two techs should be able to go through and measure it and let it run. And it could also be, it could be a transistor, but they said it had the transistor replaced. I think it's also very likely, more so than the transistor, the Diego's right, is that most Music Man amps from that period, had a fiber board by the output tubes, next to the output tubes, running parallel with the long dimension of the cab, so going sideways, and a bunch of so if the board was running like this, they had all the caps and resistors running like this, and as that board got the wavy problem, the same way all Fender boards do, they get the wave. That wave puts stress on the cap and resistor lead solder joints, and they're under tension, and everything's okay until it gets hot. Maybe something's pulling out of a solder joint as it gets hot. You may just need to have all those solder joints reflowed on that board. The main board of the amp is not going to have that because the main board is a PCB, but it does have that one fiber board right there next to the output tubes. And that always does the hills and valleys, and all the resistors are mounted in such a way that each hill and valley that forms strains that connection. You could have one thing that looks like it's fine, but if you tug on it, the resistor lead actually pulls out of a tiny little hole, and it's fine as long as everything's cold. It gets hot after a while, and it flexes, and you don't have a connection. That's also that's more likely than the speaker, but you need to check both those things. And there may be some other thing happening, but I'd have to have the amp in front of me to tell you. Sorry. Yeah, Goody Guitars, I bet. Yeah, yeah. It was a very cold, clear morning. I don't care about cheap. I'd rather have 20 people buy a T-shirt and 20 people get a good T-shirt than 100 people buy a crappy T-shirt and think I'm a rip-off artist, you know. But I don't know. I think there are probably a lot of people who buy a $20. I probably think they're probably like $30, $40 now these days, the way things go. T-shirt than buy a $60 T-shirt, and I don't want to pay $60 for a T-shirt with anyone's name on it. My wife bought me this T-shirt, which is actually too big for me. It's hanging off my shoulders, so it's a huge T-shirt. But as a result, it's very comfortable for working in the shop in, and I love REM. But I tend not to wear too many branded T-shirts. I'm not going to wear something that says Nike or anything, unless they want to pay me. I've got this, and I've got the Stacks, and sometimes I wear a Sun T-shirt. But I don't. I like paying $10 for a T-shirt. I guess those days are in the past. We're gonna get even more in the past. Let's see. Why does the chassis measure 120 VAC? I'm measuring from the hot to chassis in all my amps, even when the amp is off. Jorge, it tells me you've got a bad ground. Nice. In all your amps, that's weird. Now, if I have a Fender with a two-prong, I showed this a couple weeks ago. I had a Fender with a two-prong cable. If I plug it in one orientation, I would have 2 volts AC potential from AC ground in the power strip to the chassis of the amp. It doesn't matter whether the amp's powered on or not. If I take the two-prong out and flip it the other way, plug it in, I would have 120 volts potential between AC ground and the chassis. And that's what the death cap is supposed to prevent, and that's why we now have polarized plugs where you cannot reverse it. The hot has to stay hot. You could have a miswired outlet in that room, which would explain why all your amps are doing it. If you had a ground fault, you would not. Well, that doesn't make any sense because if you're measuring from the same outlet your amps are plugged into, it'd be the same ground. Wait, you're measuring from the hot wire to chassis. I think meant from. Sorry, I misread you because of my glasses. I think meant you're reading from the ground of your outlet to chassis. If you measure from the hot wire to chassis in your amp, even when the amp is off, when the amp is off, your hot from your power still is 120 volts there. You're switching off after where it enters the amp. So there's always 120 volts potential between hot and ground in your amp. It's supposed to be between hot and neutral, and the neutral is going to be the return path in a healthy system, and the ground's just there if something interrupts the neutral. But where some other fault happens. I misunderstood what you're asking. I thought you were saying that you had chassis from ground, 120 volts from your AC ground to the chassis in all your amps. You're supposed to have 120 volts from the black wire to chassis on all your amps because your chassis is at ground and your hot wire is 120 volts above ground in the States. Hey, Gringo. Hey, Victor. At some point, I was using Zangbuckers. What do I think of them? I liked the sound of them. The problem I have with the Zangbuckers is the same problem I have with the ones that Stu Mac puts out, which are good sounding pickups. They've got their retro ones. The covers that Zangbucker uses, and the covers that Stu Mac uses, and the covers a lot of smaller pickup builders are using, are these made in China covers. And after a short while, like 6 to 8 weeks, you begin to see like a honeycomb hex pattern beneath the nickel or chrome, and they just look cheap, because they're cheap covers. And I took the Zangbuckers out, thinking, okay, well, I'll get some good covers and put them on there, and then I'll use those in some other guitar. And I just haven't gotten around to it. I really like the MAFs in my 335, and I really like the stock ones with the Alnico 2 swap in the bridge on my SG. And so I've got these Zangbuckers with nothing to put in them, and I don't like the look of an uncovered PAF. But the covers that Zangbucker used are the same crappy covers that a lot of companies are using, and they're just crappy looking after a while. I don't like seeing a little honeycomb hex pattern. It makes it look like it's computer printed. So I just filed that away to something to do later, and I haven't done it yet. Really nice sounding pickups, though. The part he controls, the bobbins and the winding and the wire, he did exactly right. But given the scale he's able to produce them at, he's not able to get the same, he's not using the same level of bobbins you get from Throwback or Lawler or Fralin. Or even Duncan. It's a big investment to buy the higher quality covers. Hey, thinking about getting custom pickups with taps on both coils for switchable underwound and regular wound from a smaller pickup winder without custom. Well, Zangbucker would do a good job of that. I had him do a tap thing for me on another guitar, and it came out really well. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with tapping, going from hot to a cooler wind. It's a separate thing from me not liking the sound of a coil tapped pickup. I prefer the series parallel, like I mentioned, but if you have a pickup wound with a partial tap, you can take it from like 10K to 8K or 12K to 9K, whatever you want to do. Just kind of gives you a hot rod switch. Or you could also go from like a 10K to like a 6K if you want to go like a P90 kind of emulation. Actually, you'd lose too much output in a humbucker to that, but more blend well with the single coils. Anyway, I found that all that stuff works, but I just find it simpler and more useful for me to just say, all right, pull it up. I'm in parallel, and that's what I want. Sorry, I misread the chassis to ground 120 volts thing, because my initial answer was very, very wrong for the question that was being asked. I still trying to look over these damn things instead of looking through these damn things. I'll get it. What's my favorite bass tube amp? Planning to build my SVT now. Already built 34 6v6 JC100 with some Bogner features. Real XC. Thank you, man. Man, if I were to build my own SVT, that would be my favorite. But I don't like the way any SVT ever has been built. The classic and the new ones, I've got too many flaws where they have crazy protective circuits that keep failing, and the new Heritage one, they run the power right by the preamp board, so the standby switch makes the whole thing go buzz. And the old ones like to catch on fire. MPEG rarely made an amp well, including the big heavy SVTs. They're terribly made. Great circuit, great sound. Not a single one ever been built that was built right. And I love the sound of a Portaflex, but they're not flexible. No pun intended. They're not versatile. So of the tube amps that I've enjoyed the most, I did a Sun 1000 to a high watt kind of bass amp conversion once. That came out really well, but I wasn't a huge fan of the chassis in the Sun. I thought it was a little bit flimsy for the amount of iron used. I would, if I had to build one, I would want to build essentially either an SVT or just think of a dual showman with KT 77s or something. The realistic answer is I don't need a huge, massive tube output section because the output section is usually pretty clean. I would build my own version, a little bit different circuit, but very similar to what you saw with that Alembic from last week, and run that into a very nice sounding solid state power amp. Because I could have a 2-rack space unit. I'd get a 4-rack space unit, so I could have a tuner and light space and a place to put your weed at. And then I'd have a really small thing that could be like 1,000 watts if I needed it to be, but also have some airflow for the tubes. And that would be what I would do, but it wouldn't be too dissimilar from what Alembic did. I have no problem with solid state solid state preamps for bass or solid state modeling for bass. And the Aguilar stuff today is really nice if you want a very clean neutral sound. That you can get a little bit aggressive, but I haven't liked any of the dark glass stuff I've tried. I've always thought it sounded exaggerated in some form or other. Hey, Victor, you've got some nice stuff already. Sir Bella is a really nice amp, but it's not a magical sound that you're missing, Especially for those of you who aren't gigging out, there's an awful lot to be said for a Princeton reverb. It's just such a nice sounding thing. I have access to all these amps. I could, for my own playing needs, a Princeton reverb or a deluxe reverb and a handful of pedals for some variation. It's hard to justify anything else for use at home. Plus, I have all the modeling stuff. If I want to call up like an Uberschall sound, I can do that. I don't want to, but I could. Do I recommend leaving the HS7s on all the time or any monitors or turning them on and off every day as needed? It's up to you. I forget about them and I turn them on I keep them on all the time, but I could very easily install a master power switch. I know I would forget. They don't draw much wattage and they're always on, and maybe I should power them off, but I just forget to. And they also work as nice night lights. They have a little white LED behind the Yamaha logo. And so if I come here late at night, even if I have no lights on the room, and I have a little light bar over my monitor here, if I have all those lights off, I've got a little bit of a night light coming off those monitors, which I like. Hey, Wes. Let's see. Well, Al Schmidt and Bill Schnee and George Massenberg are great choices. I might put on Joshua Judge's Ruth along those lines. I got to meet George Massenberg once under really funny circumstances. He and I were both members of an audio group. I was a member. It was a Usenet thing. He was on there infrequently. I was on there frequently. Such is the way of the life. Those who do and those who talk about doing. Anyway, I was invited to this thing in Nashville, and a lot of people on that forum were doing it. And George was invited, and somehow I got his phone number. I don't know how I got George Massenberg's phone number. Anyway, I had it on my phone. I never used it. It was just, I had it. And I got to Nashville, and I realized that I had left the piece of paper with the address of where I was supposed to go in Memphis. And I called my buddy in Nashville. He didn't answer. This is before cell phones. Cell phones existed, but they were pretty crude. And I didn't have access to the internet on it. I didn't have any access to the internet that day. And so I'm like, okay, well, I know George is going to this thing. Do I call George Massenberg? I fucking called George Massenberg. I called him, hey, George, we've not met, but we have a mutual friend. I'm going to the thing this afternoon over at Dave's house, and I've lost the directions. Do you, or do you have an assistant who could give me the directions? He was really nice, gave me the directions, and I did get to talk to him at the party for about 15 minutes. But, you Yeah, I called George Massenburg out of the blue. So just put these right here on the table. Thud, thud. You know, I do love his work. I use Nightfly as a for instance, Diego, because that is something that so many live sound engineers used to use to ring out PAs, as you know, and Dustin may still do it. But yeah, I take Judge's Ruth or maybe Graceland over Nightfly myself. Let us know if it does, because yeah, I mean, if you know the record and you know it has this frequency response that you need or this characteristics that you need to check, I don't think any engineer who puts on IGY just because they can't get enough of IGY after 30 years of playing IGY. But if it tells them about the time enlightenment of the tweeters or whatever, that happened 2 years before I was born, Martin. Sorry. But I mean, I've seen the footage multiple times. And, whenever I see the launch from those days, I hear. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, sorry. Now that would have sounded awful because I didn't have the gate on for this. But every time I see that footage, that still stuck in my head. Back when we actually had music on television. I call you old, but I know that someone else is going to call me old for remembering the Challenger. Everything we put out there in the world comes back to us eventually. So I try to be kind, and I appreciate you guys sharing your wisdom with us in your decrepitude. Brad's too young. He may not even know what I was just playing. And it occurs to me that's the first time I've ever played that. I never even looked for it before. I think I got their key right. I had that one fumble finding it, but there it was. I'm pretty sure that's the key they did it in. But I'm pretty sure the earth was the sound was going to be worse with that mic clipping for that. Anyway, speaking of clipping, we're at the top of the next hour, so do another 7 minutes and check you guys back in a little bit. Sorry, got caught up in the sideshow of the idjit there. Yeah, Wes, I'll send you a link to that. It's a Gator Frameworks. I'll send you a link to it. Works really well. I've got my monitors here on one, and then I've got two there for the meters and the scope, and it lets me control the height and the angle and all that stuff. So my monitors, my tweeters are right at ear level here, and the scope's off the bench, so it's not taking up real estate, and the meters are up where I can reach them, but I can also just leave them there and have all three, whatever. And they work very well as they rotate around the sun, as the earth spins. Oh my God, just people who just refuse to pass third grade. I saw you timed them out. I kicked them off the channel. I don't need anti-science idiots here when everything I do is some form of science. Flash 84, man. Pixies REM would have used that AC50 and been thrilled. Remember, they didn't start off as REM. They didn't start off as Pixies. They start off as a band like anyone else. They used what they could get. You know, Peter Buck, before he had all the iconic AC30s, had a whole bunch of late 70s twins because it was loud enough to be used for the gigs that he was needing to do. Be heard anywhere, and he could get a sound. It's not the best sound he ever got, but you know, the magic of any of those musicians is not the gear that they used, though the gear can either help or get in the way of stuff. So don't feel that you have to have the rig of a touring act that sold 7 million albums. You have to have something that makes music. And Peter Buck would sound just like himself. Black Francis would sound just like himself. I mean, even I sound good with my SG through that 62 AC15 that was here, Wes. Or if I were to plug it, one of my humbucker or P90 equipped things into the EF86 channel on the Excalibur, it does that thing. And Bukovac would sound even better. That's the bad thing about it does come down to some degree to the talent, which is really inconvenient for some of us. Yeah, get the amp that suits you. You can always, if you have a bigger gig than the AC15 handles by itself, though it's really louder than you think. Buy, rent, borrow an external 2x12. Then you've got 3 12-inch speakers at once. That's moving more air than an AC15 will. What I think of toroidal transformers, they're fine if it's a high-quality one and the noise field is not becoming a problem. You got to position them right. So they do have a null, but there's nothing wrong with using a toroidal. I don't find that there's any real benefit unless you're building a rack thing. Yeah. Yeah, he can no longer annoy us from satellite links in orbit. I didn't know you were Orthodox, Gooden. Clean volume pots and fender reshoes sound statically and poppy when not touching ground on chassis or guitar strings. Normal. No, it's not normal. You've got a faulty ground somewhere in your amp. All right, I'm not touching anything on the amp right now. So it's a fender reissue. The guitars, I'm going to unplug the guitar, and I'm not going to touch the chassis or anything. This is the sound that you should hear when I do that. The amp is dimed at the moment. Oh, it's powered off. That explains why. Give me just a second. I'll repeat that. With the amp actually powered on. I forgot that I turned it off a while ago. But no, you got a fault in your amp. Let's try that again. Little bitty sound. Nothing to worry about. Now I'm going to do the same thing while touching the chassis. So it does matter. Now I'll tell you the secret. If I had the shielding in place on top, which is present on the top of the cab, I wouldn't have to touch it. It'd be shielded. But you've got some issue with ground in your amps. I remember why I powered the amp off. I powered the amp off so we wouldn't have to hear the reverb tank make so much sound as I walked. I have a chance to buy a 1969 dual showman head. What should I know about them and look for before I buy? Hey, Cherry Forever. Check out all my vintage Fender playlist videos, and you'll see amps come in that needed a little bit of work, and amps come in with horror stories. And in those videos, I go through the things to look out for. But it's a deep subject, more than I can do in a chat, but I've got literally hours on the subject. And before you spend the money, I'm expecting that to be at least $1,200. Spend an afternoon watching a whole bunch of those videos, going through and seeing what you see. There won't be any, I don't think I have any dual Showmans up, but that's the same thing as a twin without reverb. It's the same thing as a Bandmaster. I've got tons of those. Same issues with all those amps. Yeah, I mean, Diego's right. But it is a long discussion, and unless you're trying to make things fit in a very small space, usually when you're building a guitar amp, you're going to have more commercial options from a standard transformer than a toroidal. But if you're building a preamp or something that has to fit in a small space, toroidal does have certain benefits, but again, it has certain downsides as far as shielding goes and noise fields. All right, leaky 76 twin. Pots are clean and caps do not leak as the issue disappears when I lift them. I cleaned the backing board, but not the underside of the eyelet board. Noted to do that too. Yeah, you got to, because the wax is on both sides of the board really heavily, and if you get all the wax up top, that's great, but all the wax on the bottom still puddles and becomes a conductive path from this eyelet to this eyelet. That's probably what's going on. I just wanted to make sure that you knew to check for leaky grids on a preamp tube before you chase your tail too much on the boards. Yeah, man, the old film projectors. I never liked the slide carousels, but I loved when we had 8 millimeter or 16 millimeter film, especially watching the teacher trying to remember how to load the damn thing at the end, the flap, 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 because they'd be running to turn it off. I miss all that stuff. Good. And I'm pretty sure Brad knows how to do this. I'm sure he appreciates all suggestions, but I think he's got that covered. Yeah, it was, man, John. It's a shame that the entire crew had to die just so someone could try to cover their ass in the short term. It didn't work. I don't agree with that, Stepford. For certain sounds, you're right, and other sounds, you don't even have to use the master volume. You can just keep the volume really low. It's a very nice clean, but you can use the channel and the master volume in conjunction with each other, and it works as a very good bedroom amp, or apartment amp, and you can use pedals to get overdrive and stuff. Even if for a large gig you don't need to, and you can let the thing get real raunchy. That's not the only sound that the amp can give. It's a versatile amp. So the sounds that you're getting loud are great, but they're not the only sounds the amp can do. You can also make it be your bedroom Princeton substitute or Champ substitute. It doesn't have to be a loud, raunchy thing. It can be a very quiet, clean thing. And with the right pedal, it can be a very quiet, raunchy thing. Nikki has started leaving apples out hopefully for the opossums in the neighborhood, because she wants to see them. She's seen them twice. I see them all the time, but they so far have not seemingly found the apples she's been leaving out for them. They just sit there. It tells me the raccoons haven't found them either. The squirrels have been doing little tiny dents to them. That's all. Sorry, I almost missed Nashville Music Man. What are my thoughts on solid-state amps for live gigging? I'm scared to take my Sura downtown, Nashville from bar to bar, looking for a good sound at an affordable price. Well, there's nothing wrong with solid-state or modeling solid-state for gigs, especially if you're going up and down Broadway and hitting all those things. It's not like the tourists are going to know or care. As long as you can get the sounds you need to get for the gig, that could be a Boss Katana. It could be a modeling pedal going into the effects return of a JC120, whatever works for you, man. Solid state amp, modeling stuff, whatever gets you paid. I mean, I know traditionally the sound on Broadway would just be a telly into a deluxe reverb, often with like a vintage 30 speaker, but that's back in the day before people wanted everything to be 80 dB. So if Karen, or what do you call those things? Or what are the little solid state amps that people carry around? Can't remember the name of it, but something that fits in the pocket of your gig bag. If it can drive a speaker cabinet enough for you to hear yourself on stage and make front of house happy, See, I scroll too far. Let's see. Why is it scrolling on me these days? Let's see. You keep scrolling. Geez, quilter. Yeah, the quilters. I don't like the sound of the quilters, but if it works for you, it works for you. All right. Hey, the golf nut. I'm always scroll down again. It's just started doing that. Yeah, I'm always busy, but I could probably squeeze in a deluxe reverb. Is it a reissue or is it an original one from the 60s or 70s? Send me an email, info@sonicaudio.com. I'll look for it. Let's see. Sorry, I'm fighting the feed. It keeps scrolling oddly. It wasn't doing it the first 2 hours. Out of curiosity, is it true that you can run the power tubes of a cathode follower at 100% dissipation? Yeah, that's where they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be idling at 100 to about 110% dissipation on a cathode bias tube, not a fixed bias. They operate more in the cleaner part of the range. They dissipate less as you actually play. It's an odd thing. Cathode bias tubes behave kind of opposite to fixed bias when you play. Would I recommend raising the value of the cathode resistor of such a power stage in a Vox for the sake of tube longevity? No, I want to make sure the amp is going to be biased between 100 and 120%, pretty much. So on an AC30, I'd want the 12-watt tubes. So between 12 watts and 14 watts idle per tube. If I need to increase tube longevity beyond that, I know that the bias is in the right range. It's not going to be too hot, and it's not going to be too cold, so you're not going to get nasty artifacts from being cold. It's not going to prematurely wear out the tube from being biased too hot. Then I'd increase the screen grid resistor. I wouldn't neuter the amp by increasing the cathode resistor. Let's see. I have no take on the V-Mod 2 pickups and the new Fender Tellys versus Lawlers. Lawlers are going to kill anything that Fender's put out since 1972. Why does it keep scrolling? Jesus. Sorry. Where'd it go? Sorry, bear with me. Is my mouse acting up? I don't think so. Let's see. Hey, Steve Smith. I don't like the looks of the Bordeaux cab, and the silver face reissue's noisy, needs a lot of work. They're both can be fine, but I think the Bordeaux looks like crap, unless you like rich Corinthian leather. Monte Carlo. I guess he did Chrysler. That's terrible, Montalban. Rich Corinthian leather. I would recommend just a standard 65 reissue Princeton if you need a Princeton. I've got a Princeton Tweed reissue from Guitar Center. Hearing the tremolo noise when it's engaged. What shall I look into? Is it still under warranty? Are you getting a ticking or a thudding? If you get a ticking, you need to put a cap either across the 10 meg resistor or across the roach on the side that the 10 meg resistor is on. If you're getting a thudding, you need to move the lead dress around V5. All the wires going to and from V5, V6, and V4 need to be moved so that the wires to V5 are not close to V6 or V4. Those are the solutions. Yeah, Chrysler, Cordoba, Tattoo. Where was the next question? Under warranty, moving the wires with a chopstick won't void the warranty. Adding a cap across the roach might, if Fender ever found out about it, though it's actually a Fender authorized service fix for that issue. So tell me if it's a ticking or it's a thudding. Usually in the new ones, it's a thudding sound that you get from poor lead dress around V5. Hey, Ralph. Thank you for being here. 6G15 reverb on power up down, loud bacon frying, isolated with only glass tube installed. You mean the rectifier? No DC on output at steady state during event meter swings, coupling caps. Trying to think of what you're asking. Sorry. Let's see. By last tube installed, do you mean the rectifier tube? I need to know that. If you're still here, Ralph. I know it's been a while since you actually asked this. Sorry. One of the problems with Ampegs, a couple problems. Okay. All right, 12x7, only last tube installed. So you got a 12x. All right, so you mean the phase inverter tube. Okay. Oh, it's a reissue. Okay. So you're getting the sound when the phase inverter tube is present. You're not getting the sound when the phase inverter is pulled. It could be a lot of things. If it's a reissue, it could be one of the filter caps is going bad, and you're getting a inrush current when you power it up or down. Could be a bad solder joint. It could be not likely to be, but it could be a leaky cap. One of the things that very might be, because there is a surge present when you power the amp up and surge present when you power the amp down. That's not going to be there in a steady state. I would discharge the amp, unplug it from the wall, remove all the screws that hold the board in place. Some of them, or either one of them or multiple of them, will be ground points where they'll be making contact with the chassis through that ground connection. A lot of times, over time, those screws come a little loose and a little dirt gets in there, and so you have a not perfect ground. And it's good enough when the amp's in operation, but surge conditions, you can have it's not sufficient to the purpose. Clean all the surfaces involved. Get off any old nail polish or any acrylic goo or anything that they might have put on the screws to hold them in place. Might have just been nail polish. Get all that stuff clean, and then once it's all dry, put it back together and tighten every screw, especially any that look like they're actually making a ground to the chassis, and then retest. Because an awful lot of the production amps, especially the Ampegs and crates from the period, once one of those ground connections came just the slightest bit dirty, it would get corroded between the surfaces. So instead of having a good ground connection, if you looked at it, you'd actually have metal crud. So check that out. It's the easiest possible repair for that amp, and it's actually very likely. What I think are the best 6V6 plate voltages to aim for with the 5E3 Deluxe, I don't recall. I'd look at what Fender put on the schematic and then try to be no more than 20 volts, 30 volts higher than that if I can't get it targeted. The one thing to be careful of is a lot of people use the Sovtech 5Y3s, and they're not real 5Y3s. They don't have as much of a voltage drop as real 5Y3. So if you have the Sovtech 5Y3, your B pluses will be artificially high. I find that new old stock 5Y3s, especially the Joint Army Navy stuff from the 70s, is still available and fairly inexpensive. But if you need to pay $10 more than the than the Sovtech for a tongue saw version or something like that, or Electro Harmonics, you're going to have an actual 5Y3 rectifier. Yeah, Diego. Yeah, George was really nice and obviously an amazing engineer and producer. Some of the drum sounds he got on While Love It and acoustic guitar sounds, while they're not my favorite sounds as far as recordings of drums go, it's one of the first ones I've ever heard where the impact of some of those toms is like what the impact of toms are to the player, or the sound of the brushes on a coated head are to the player. Even if I think his acoustic guitar sounds on some of his albums is a little too pristine. But it's really hard to achieve that perfect pristine sound, which he does. So. Let's see. All right, I'm caught up to where we were right after the end of the last intermission. So, well, thanks very much, Martin. I appreciate you joining us every Saturday night. You with your wee dram or two. I'd love to visit you. I've always wanted to go to Scotland, Edinburgh and Glasgow, though I might need a translator for Glasgow. I'm willing to take the chance. Ah, man, chop it all to hell and then throw it away where it belongs. Nasty, oily, greasy soap nonsense. Ugh. I cannot abide cilantro. And I remember most of my life I never had to. There was no cilantro anywhere, and all of a sudden, in the last 10 years, everything's got cilantro. Ugh. And they look at you like you're uncultured if you don't want Dawn detergent poured on your food. So hard to get people to understand. Hey, Flash 84. Depends on the model. The new hand wired is well made, though not as well made as it should be for the cost. The previous hand wired is well made, again not well made enough for the cost. The AC30 Custom is very well made. The Custom Classic had some issues, but it was overall well made. The Holy Grail Corgera TBX that everyone lusts after because it was made in Britain is really poorly made, because that's how life works. People think made in England is going to be automatically better, which is big news to anyone who's had an English car, and I'm sure that Martin giggles at the thought. But the JMIs were great despite bizarrenesses. But that was the JMI era lasted 10 years. It was pretty much done by 69. What brands of resistors do I recommend for doing repair work? Thanks. Hey, SARS McBars. It used to be that I would primarily use Zycons. They seem to be less on the marketed these days. Right now, I primarily use Vichy's for metal films and some metal oxides, and I use Yageo for everything else. I usually use 2 and 5% half-watt carbon films. I get them from Mauser. Oh, I don't care what your personal beliefs are, but in terms culturally, I didn't know that you're culturally Orthodox. I'm culturally Episcopalian. So I'm personally an atheist. But culturally, I'm an Episcopalian, and it's hard to undo that. So I didn't know that culturally you grew up in the Orthodox tradition, so Eastern Orthodox. So it's interesting to me. Smoked chicken is often overlooked, but awesome. Well, it's really hard to get it to light, and the rolling process is another subject. Hey, Rubber Tank Boys, hey, you don't have to call me sir, you can call me Lyle. You can call me a lot of things, but you don't have to call me sir. Can I make my normal channel on my ultralinear twin more like the normal channel of the Paul Revere Twin 2? I've already changed bass pots to 250K on channel 2. Can I do that on normal channel? Well, I don't. The bass pot on a twin reverb has always been 250K audio taper, 10% taper. And the ultralinear twin has the same pot already. The stock bass pot on ultralinear twin is a 250K audio taper, and I believe that's the same value on the Rivera. I don't think you need to change the bass pot on the normal channel. I think what you might be running into, however, is on the ultralinear twins. In the 60s, they had a input capacitor on the phase inverter of 1,000 picofarads, so 1 nanofarad, and there were 1 meg grid leaks there from either side. And then about 72-ish, they changed them from 1 meg to 330K, but they changed the input from 1 nanofarad to 10 nanofarad. So they decreased the value of the cap, the resistor by 2/3. So the new resistor value is 1/3 the value of the previous resistor, but they increased the size of the cap by 10, which means that the input of the phase inverter in the late 70s Fenders, especially the ultralinear twins, has way more low end than a twin should have, which makes the bass pot seem like it's the culprit because it gets flubby so fast. If you were to increase the value of the 60s coupling cap coupling cap by the same factor of 3 that you decrease the value of the resistor, you would end up with a 3 nanofarad, not a 10 nanofarad cap. So if you're to change out the 10 nanofarad input coupling cap of your ultralinear twin to a 3 or 3.3 nanofarad, which is a 0.003 or 0.0033 microfarad cap, then you would have the same bass roll-off in your twin that it has in like a 65, 66 twin reverb, which is the gold standard. At which point your existing bass pot should be very useful on both channels. Both channels should have 250K audio taper pots. Now, some late 70s Fenders botched that and used 250K linear pots, in which case it just gets really bassy really fast. So that's the other thing to look for. But 250K audio taper pot, decrease the input coupling cap from 10 nanofarad to 3 or 3.3 nanofarad. You should be very happy. Well, it's good advice, isn't it, Randy? And your neighbors will appreciate it. And if you actually put in the time practicing, you'll get really good doing it that way. You'll get a lot of strength and a lot of speed because everything on acoustic is so much harder. Thanks, Jorge. I appreciate that. Yeah, my wife loves it when I do this too because she gets to do her thing for 3 hours and I'm not always bothering her. Favorite Roger Moore Bond movie? His is For Your Eyes Only. Well, I will say a couple of things. I don't think that Roger Moore has a truly good movie because they kept shifting the goal line on him. I think that Roger Moore gives truly excellent performances across a lot of different expectations of what Bond should be. And I do like the more ruthless Bond that you see at moments in For Eyes Only. And I like the more grounded plot of For Your Eyes Only overall. I don't think the villain of Your Eyes Only is very interesting, even though the actor Julian Glover is fantastic in other things. I don't think he has much to do there. And a film's usually only as good as its bad guy. The side plot with the underage ice skating girl is gross, stupid, and a distraction from anything of import. I think they undercut what could have been a much better movie by including all that side stuff. If you view what's happening with the Greek girl seeking revenge on her parents, the tone of that movie could have been much more like License to Kill, which was a kind of an 80s action revenge flick masquerading as a Bond flick. I think that sorry, it's my stream. I get to talk about what I want to. I think Live and Let Die has a lot of charm. Not all of the aspects as far as race and gender have aged that well, but many things made in 1972, 73 haven't. It's got the best Bond theme of all time. I think Roger Moore came out of the gate swinging. He knew what he wanted to do. He was differentiating himself from Connery, and it's a lot of fun. I don't think all of it holds up that well, but overall, even when it comes to race and sexual and gender, it does hold up for its time. And when I think they didn't miss in any kind of weird, mean ways like they did with, say, like all the white actors playing Asians in Dr. No. But I think the best Roger Moore movie has to be judged as the best movie done during the Roger Moore era with all that entails. And so for me, it's The Spy Who Loved Me because it was the mostest without going to space, without Bond being a clown, literally, in Octopussy. Octopussy, the whole thing with the Russian eggs makes no sense. It's a plot that goes nowhere, bad guys that go different. If you view the Bond movies as a spectrum, at one end, the only good example of that end of things is The Spy Who Loved Me. Has a great theme song for the time it came out. Great sense of humor about itself. Bond was really cool. He actually had some moments of where he got to act, not just be charming. It's a shame that Barbara Bach was so unable to act in what could have been a much more interesting role, but she was certainly not hard to look at, which was her primary job in that movie. The villain's not that great, but Jaws in that movie, the henchman was better than the bad guy. As far as Bond movies go in full, this is not a ranking of which movie is best, but I would say Of the Connery movies, it has to be From Russia with Love. Because it's the only one where he was really taking him. Everything about that movie came together in a serious way. There's so many things about Doctor No that are cool, but just don't quite work. And Underneath the Mango Tree, what the hell is that? You could say the whole thing gelled as a product with Goldfinger, but Goldfinger is really not that interesting of a movie, and a lot of things in it don't make any damn sense. We're not going to talk about fucking Diamonds or Forever, but so Doctor No's a good start. From Russia with Love is the best movie that Connery did. I like George Lazenby in Her Majesty's Secret Service. The trouble with George Lazenby is that he spends half the movie playing the foppish guy who's there to do the pedigree, to do the family crest, and he's being dubbed by he's being dubbed by another actor for those scenes. So not only is he not playing Bond, he's playing Bond masquerading as a silly person, and he's being dubbed by a different actor to get that posh accent. So you don't see a lot of Lazenby getting a chance to do anything in that movie. And he's also given some crappy things to say and do. Like he's given "this never happened to the other fellow" line, which is painful. And they do so many even more ramp speed action sequences in that movie than they did in Thunderball, where the action scenes you just stop cranking it. Just let us see it in real life. But the things that he does with Tracy are phenomenal, and the settings are phenomenal, and the structure of the movie is great. When it comes to Dalton, it's tough for me. I think that neither movie is particularly great, but I think he is great in both of them. I would probably have to go with License to Kill, just because the bad guys in the first one aren't that interesting. As far as Brosnan Man, it gets problematic because he had one really good movie, and then 4 more movies where he was really good, and Michelle Yeoh was not Yeoh. What is her last name? I can't remember her last name right now. Was really good, but the premises and the plots were just terrible. And the last one, he's water skiing tsunamis, and they have invisible cars, and and the whole premise of it is bad. But Goldeneye is 90% a really good movie, and he is really good in all of his movies, even when he's given shit to say. Craig consistently had the best movies as movies go in terms of cinematography, direction, premises, though they kept reusing a lot of the same premises, and the writer's strike really crippled the second one, Quantum of Solace. And it does have a very good bad guy, but it has aspects that are glorious and beautifully shot. Spectre, 2/3 a good movie, and the whole decision to rehash the Austin Powers thing and make Blofeld his secret half-brother. Austin Powers already had that idea. Don't do that. Bad writing. But Daniel Craig is phenomenal in all of them. The directors are always phenomenal. The cinematography is always really up there. As far as the movie being beautiful, Skyfall is the best Bond movie ever made. It is captivating to watch from beginning to end. Every member of the cast is killing it, and there's some parts of the plot that just don't make any sense or that need too many coincidences to work. I would say that are we back? Are we back? Are we back? Seems to be back. Hello? Let's see. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, the internet maybe the internet really loved Octopussy. Skyfall is one of the most amazing action movies ever made visually, but I think Casino Royale might be the better Bond movie. Not by a lot, but it also relies on fewer coincidences. And No Time to Die has the same problem as Spectre in that Christoph Waltz's Blofeld not only should not have been Bond's brother, but he was non-threatening and kind of a non-entity in that movie. Um, in No Time to Die, the actor who also ruined Bohemian Rhapsody just has no charisma, no menace, no personality. He's just dead fish face on screen for his screen time, and he's not a threat. So I don't know what went wrong with 3 of the 5 Craig movies, but I think Craig is consistently the best actor to play Bond. He doesn't always have the best material. Connery invented Bond, but he got bored with it real fast, and the movies around him got silly. Roger Moore kept having shifting targets, and they stayed on too long. Timothy Dalton got dealt a poor hand, though he was fantastic. He was phenomenal in Hot Fuzz and a bunch of other stuff. And, man, Brosnan just got one really good movie and then 4 stinkers that just went All right, that's me on Bond. Let's see, where were we with the questions and stuff? We got another 12 minutes. I'll try to get through some. But, I do like For Your Eyes Only. I'd say it's my second or third favorite of the Moore era. Let's see. I'm not going to be able to get to all the questions. Yeah, I've got... Yeah, I would. Hey, all you guys making fun of me for tasting the soap and cilantro, means that in the back in the hunter-gatherer days, you guys would have eaten alkaloids and died. That I would have been like, nope, that's poison. I'm not going to eat that. I do have the same asparagus enzyme. Hey, Meryl, I don't have any ads popping up over the chat dialog box on my end. I don't know what's going on with that. See, Wes is also raised Episcopalian. I knew there was a reason. And it says I'm unable to connect to chat. Please try again later. That's a issue with, let's see here. All right, there we go. Let's get back now. Sorry, I had an issue with Firefox. Let's see, where were we? I'm an atheist, thank God. Let's see. Man, Meryl, we're the same age, and I'm pretty sure you outrank me. Stop with the sir shit. Yeah, I know it's coriander, Brad. In America, we call the leaf cilantro. We call the seed coriander, which is nice because I like ground coriander seed on like grilled fish and pork and stuff. But I cannot abide the soapy poison taste of the leaf. Let's see, I went off. Someone pulled my Bond string, so I clapped it all out. But trying to get back to any questions. Yeah, man, Diego, the car jump is a great example of what was wrong with the Moore era. That was a really cool stunt. One in a million. Took a lot of planning. The balls on that guy to do that stunt, and they got it in one take. And then they ruined it with that slide whistle. It just makes you take it not seriously. They kept not letting you take things seriously in the Moore era, and they build up the potential for all this tension. And then they have fucking women being run through the woods by eaten by attack dogs in the woods, which totally does not match anything else in Moonraker. It's like, what are you trying to do here? Is it a comedy? Is it a spoof? Is it an action adventure? Is it going to be a thriller? They didn't know. And yeah, you should watch all the Moores, but start with On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Brad, because it's the one with a fucking Australian for you. Hey, Gerben, what's my preferred way to run the wire for the full tree HC supply to V1 and V2? Got my C1 in, really like it. All right, cool. Well, if you look at the back of the board, and I'm going to not give all the little steps because if anyone who needs to follow the little steps can't do this. Look at the back of the board, find the resistor that separates the screen supply from the phase inverter supply, and then you have another dropping resistor which separates the phase inverter supply from the two preamp nodes. What you want to do is connect the preamp nodes to the screen supply, not to the phase inverter supply. So you're going to cut a trace connecting the PI to the 10K, so you get from the preamp node's going to have a 10K dropper, and then you're going to have a 15K dropper, 22K, sorry, and then 10K, both to the same node, which would, in the stock amp, be connected with a coupling cap to the screen, the phase inverter. You connect it to the screen instead of the phase inverter. So the phase inverter and each preamp node are all coming directly from the screen supply as opposed to going screen to phase inverter to the other preamp stuff. You Only Live Twice has some good aspects, but man, the whole Sean Connery disguising himself as a Japanese, and it doesn't make any sense. But man, the volcano set for Blofeld's lair is one of the most amazing things you've ever seen. Back in the day when they had to build it for real. So's the submarine hangar in That's Why You Love Me, and Donald Pleasance is probably the best Blofeld. The AC30 and the AC15, the modern ones, are the exact same, but the thing is that there are different models. There's the custom classic, there's the hand-wired, there's the new hand-wired, and there's the custom, and each one of them is built to different standards. So look at my videos on whichever amp you're looking at, and you get my full opinion on that. Yeah, Ken Adam did pretty much all of them except for From Russia with Love until what, 82, 83. And the only reason he didn't do From Russia with Love is because Stanley Kubrick pitched him to do all the sets for, especially the War Room set for Dr. Strangelove. Not a bad gig if your work gets you stolen by Stanley. Yeah, the train fight is great. That I think that's the only it's the only fight scene up until Dalton where the actor really sold the fight scene. But yeah, Connery and Shaw really worked hard to pull that off, and they did. Robert Shaw is also pretty good in this little movie called Jaws. You may not have heard about it. Yeah, it's Quantum of Solace. I'm not defending the whole thing because they needed a writer. They should have held off until the actual writer's strike was over, or make them pay the writers. And what I thought there, I'm sure you understand what I'm saying there. But at the same time, it has some really beautiful things in it, some really well done stuff that you want to like that movie. But certain things just don't make sense. Yeah, that's some of Deacon's best work. I saw Blade Runner 2049, and there are aspects of it that were beautiful, but the movie wasn't very good. Skyfall, you get the beautiful looks, incredible stuff like that. Fight at the top of the skyrise with all the glass and the neon. I don't even know how they did that without seeing the camera a million times. He's just so good. But to have all those visuals and a good movie, It's kind of like 1917, though the visuals for 1917 for the most part were dialed way back from that. It wasn't Deakins being as expressionist. I mean, those two movies, my God. I don't know if my internet acted up, which took everyone else's out, or whether there was a hitch in the YouTube get along. But trying to we got another 2 minutes. I may go a little bit over, but I want to make sure I respond to anything I need to respond to. Thanks, Wes. That's the trouble with being a cycle. I've got one of those memories. If I read it or I'm interested in it, it tends to get filed away. It doesn't work with numbers, obviously, but it helps me do what I do and do these streams. Because hell yeah, I remember on 62 the bassman had this change, and so that same useless skill when it comes to Bond movies or Star Wars or whatever or Lord of the Rings becomes very useful for my job. But I would almost rather get on here and talk about Bond and Star Wars and why I think Scorsese is overrated than talk about amps. But people want me to talk about amps, so that's how I get in there. I thought Mike Myers as Bond, Austin Powers, was funny for the first 5 minutes, and then they made 3 movies out of it. I think the only thing Mike Myers did that I really loved was So I Married an Axe Murderer. Though he still went a little too far as his Scottish dad. Head down now. All right, A. Zimmer gets a little real with us there. The Empire string, that's a whole other chat. View to a Kill is a shitty movie. The plot of it is a total rehash of Goldfinger, pretty much. B, Tanya Roberts can't act. C, Roger Moore was too old and didn't really care anymore. And man, if you're gonna have Christopher Walken in something, let him either do it straight or let him really go for it. This in between, he wasn't much of a threat. I think that movie was like 3 rewrites and a different Bond away from being good. It would have been better with Dalton, better writer, and if so much of it's going to hinge on the female lead, don't let it be Tanya Roberts. Second best Bond theme song, though. I'll stand behind that. No experience with Ampeg GVT, sorry. You live down the street from the AMC dealership. Wow, Victor. I did know that Dahl did the script for You Only Live Twice. I did know that Fleming did Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Yeah, I mean, the thing we have to remember for old George is that he bullshitted his way into that job. He never acted. He'd never been in any movies. He went to London. He went and bought one of the suits made by the same tailor for Connery that Connery never picked up. And he went to get his hair cut at the same barber that Connery used. And while he was at the barber, he met Broccoli. And he just bullshitted his way into the job. Said, yeah, I've been in all these movies in Australia and Asia, and I've done this and I've done that. And, he secret agent himself into the part. But then so much of the movie he's playing a different character, and to get the upper class annoying voice, they dubbed him. So he didn't have much chance on that front. But yeah, Telly Savalas and Diana Rigg are going to steal any scene he's in. But I think he did a much better job than the average minor league male model would have done in the spot. I also think that that's the first time the director stepped up and didn't just shoot things as three walls sets like a stage play. They actually had ceilings, they had incidental light, natural light, actual interest in what things looked like. There's some cool details with when he goes in to confront. I won't get into it too much. I could do a whole thing on that. Yeah, Peter Sellers was a horrible, abusive drunkard. He was an awful person, sadly. Possibly the funniest human being of the century after Groucho, but not a very pleasant person, apparently. Well, I have to call you and ask about that. I didn't know that Deakins had any association with animation, but I imagine every animator in the world has studied what Deakins and people at that level have done. I didn't know that Deakins was directly involved in it. That's cool. What amp would I recommend to get the Live and Let Die guitar sound? Well, that's probably Paul in his home studio with an AC50 and his Casino or his Les Paul. I think he had just a Casino at that time. It's the same kind of sound that you hear on Jet. It's the same kind of sound that you hear on Maybe I'm Amazed. Sergio, 5150. I'm sorry I did miss your question, but if you ask it again, I'll try to get to it before we end. I love that Duran Duran song. I love Duran Duran from that period, but there you go. Not like an Australian. Well, Stepford, I love Sowing the Seeds of Love. That entire album is fantastic. But maybe you're too young to appreciate what Duran Duran was doing. And that's a subject for another stream. You come in next week, Stepford, and I'll tell you exactly why you're wrong, and you'll come out of it with a new appreciation for what Duran Duran did, especially the fact that they achieved something really innovative in pop music by actually playing their own instruments at a very high level when they were like 20 years old. Well, you're 63? Well, get your memory checked, dude. Duran Duran was awesome before Ordinary World era stuff. Anyway, they smell like they sound, man. They smell like they sound. How can you possibly top that? Oh my God, that's peak everything. All right. See you guys next time. Any questions I didn't get to, I'll get back to them next time. Until then, stay hungry like the wolf.